Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto opens the 8 celestial gates combined with most of the Kyuubi's chakra. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It was all beginning to slowly eat away at him. He continued to put up his brash front whenever anyone else was around, but inside things only got worse. Having the cast removed from his arm earlier in the week hadn't helped. His arm was still covered in bandages that itched a bit, just another constant reminder. Naruto stumbled a bit as he walked aimlessly through the village. He was haunted by the darkness. It was there constantly, just at the very edge of his awareness. He had thought that he had conquered it long ago, but now, just when everything was supposed to be going his way, he felt it coming back. All the loneliness from his younger days was slowly coming back to him. He could feel the distance between himself and his precious people grow ever so slightly every single day. It was even worse this time because he knew that he was the one putting that distance there. His new jutsu was no good. Sakura tried to tell him so at the hospital. Kakashi-sensei then started to tell him the other night at Ichiraku Ramen, and he bewildered past his sensei's words. Tsunade herself finally visited him and told him to never use it again. All that time, the weeks that had been like decades, had become pointless. The others tried to reassure him from time to time. They tried to tell him that he was becoming a powerful wind master, but every time he looked in the mirror he saw failure and felt useless. Even his victory over that Kakuzu zombie thing had slowly soured in his mind. What was the point, he often asked himself, if he had such great power? If using it did nearly as much damage to himself as his opponent? Again. The only reason why he was likely still breathing was that damn fox. He had hurt Sakura, just like he had hurt Jiraiya. The one who hurt Sakura was you, Naruto. The words of Sensei Yamato haunted him. He had lost a lot of sleep over those words. There had been many nights that he had woken in a cold sweat, gasping in fear. Some nights he would wake several times. Although the marks were gone, he could still vividly see his claw marks on her arm every time he looked at her. The nightmares seemed to only be getting worse. His heart sank every time he thought of her now. He could have killed her then. He hadn't realized it, but he had forced himself not to think about that by burying himself into his training. Now, with all the extra time he had to himself waiting for his arm to heal, he hadn't stopped thinking about how easily he could have killed Sakura. All those years, he had thought he had loved her so much, and would have done anything to make her happy. Now all he could think was how that could be true if the fox could make him hurt her, and he had not even realized what he had done. He must have been right when Tsunade had first come to Konoha. Sakura was better off with Sasuke. Over the years he had forced himself to stop thinking that almost immediately, but now things were different. Sasuke. He was still weaker than Sasuke. How could he become Hokage if he couldn't save his first friend? That was what he had thought just the other day. Now Orochimaru was dead and apparently his friend didn't need to be saved. Maybe he needed to be saved even more and Naruto wouldn't be able to. Just another example of how worthless he was. He had hurt two of his most precious people. Who would be next? Again he stumbled. His mind kept going back to that, and he felt sick to his stomach. That was odd since he hadn't eaten at all today, and to tell the truth he hadn't been eaten much at all these past few days. He had tried staying in his apartment, and thought about pretending to be truly sick, but Sakura would have stopped by sooner or later, and she would know he wasn't sick. He would have to face her again. He fought back the acidic taste that started to rise in his throat, and he rubbed his Adam's apple. What if he hadn't struck her arm but had struck her throat? He thought darkly. A vision of himself standing over her with her throat torn out popped into his mind. He was all too familiar with that image. It was the one that almost always woke him late at night. Although some nights it was far worse, the times that horrific scene didn't wake him and the nightmare would continue after Sakura's death. Those nights were the worst. Those nightmares always ended with him screaming himself awake after everyone he cared for was dead at his hands. The smallest whimper escaped from his voice and his head swam as he imagined the light fading from her eyes and her brilliant red blood flowing into the ground. He felt even sicker now, and he leaned against the tree so he wouldn't fall down. The origin of your strength is not the Kyuubi chakra. But what allows you to endure the Kyuubi chakra is the strength of your own chakra. Yamato-sensei's words bubbled up through the haze. The strength of my own chakra? He suddenly stopped his aimless wandering that had almost led to Ichiraku Ramen. A look of grim determination settled onto his face as he stood in the middle of the street. He looked at the Ichiraku sign. He knew he should eat if only to keep going, but he knew that anything he ate wouldn't stay down as long as that last vision stayed so vivid in his mind. He needed something new to bury himself into. Something that would take as much effort as building the Rasen Shuriken. He had one really good idea on exactly where to start looking for that something. He suddenly changed directions and started heading to the edge of the village, never noticing the shadowed figure of Hinata following him. She was very worried about him. She knew that something was bothering him, and it was much worse than the time he was looking down just before his match with Niji all those years ago. She was torn by her conflicting feelings. She had never seen him like this, and she ached to be able to find the courage to approach him and offer her help. She had come so far in so many ways, in large part because of him. Yet now when he so obviously needed someone she was nearly paralyzed with fear. She stole one glance back to Ichiraku and couldn't believe that something could bother Naruto so much he would avoid his favorite ramen shop. The fear gripped her heart. She suddenly felt that in the state he was in now any mistake she made talking to him would be greatly magnified. She couldn't bear the thought of trying to reach out to him now only to have her stutter betray her. She activated her Byakugan and drifted back slightly so she could follow him with less risk of him discovering that he was being followed. Part of her knew though that he was so troubled that she could probably walk directly behind him and not be noticed. It wasn't long before he found himself at Rock Lee's dojo, and he began pounding on the door, causing it to rattle ominously in a short amount of time. Lee! Open the door! I need your help. Naruto! It's good to see you, my friend. Although I would appreciate it if you didn't break my door. Lee exclaimed as he opened the door with a smile. Lee, you did something back during the Chunin exam when you fought Gaara that I want you to teach me. Naruto immediately jumped right to what he wanted. You actually remember something that far back, Naruto? Lee said with a teasing smile. He looked into Naruto's eyes and saw something unsettling. Suddenly he had a bad feeling about this conversation and was hoping to sidetrack his friend. I thought you weren't very good at remembering stuff. Naruto scowled before looking sad and speaking softly he said. Lee, I had a pretty lousy life up until I became a genin. I guess I usually felt that most things just weren't worth remembering. It was a bad habit. I have been getting better though, training with Jiraiya has helped. Since I became a genin my life may have gotten harder in a lot of ways but it also got better, so there's plenty worth remembering now. Having friends really helps, you know. Yes, Naruto, I know what you mean. There was a short, silent pause between them. Anyway. Naruto broke the silence. You were fighting Gaara and it looked like he had you beat, but you did something that let you bounce back and really press him hard. I asked Sakura later about it, and she said it involved gates or something. I need to be stronger and I think that could help. Could you teach me? I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't. It is a forbidden jutsu. I had a feeling but I need more strength to catch up to Sasuke. I have to keep my promise to Sakura-chan and bring him back. Even if he's become a world-class asshole. You seem very angry with him, Naruto, almost like you don't want to bring him back. Just because he's the first real friend I ever had doesn't mean I can't be pissed off at him. How can I become Hokage if I can't save my friend? Besides, you know I can't break that promise to Sakura. I thought you were madly in love with her yourself, Naruto. Do you really want two rivals for her affections? Again Lee smiled as he tried to tease his friend and sidetrack him away from thinking about the jutsu he wanted. Talking about Sakura had always sidetracked Naruto in the past. Lee, don't get me wrong, I do love her, but it's not like that for me anymore, Naruto said as he looked down, his stomach twisted as again he got the vision of his claw marks on her arm. Sakura is more like a sister to me now. Even if her feelings for Sasuke change, she would never love me like that. Naruto's voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. I don't think anyone should love me like that anymore. His voice rose again and neither of them noticed Hinata fade deeper into the shadows of the nearby trees before she turned and ran away. Besides, if there's anyone Sakura likes other than Sasuke, it's you, Lee. He finally finished. Me. The green-clad ninja's eyes grew wide. He was a little stunned about what Naruto had told him about the flowers and he had completely missed Naruto's whisper. Hearing Naruto's opinion of Sakura's feelings towards him had shaken Lee's world. Of course you fool, even I know that one. Didn't she ever tell you that all the flowers you got at the hospital were from her? Anyway, I need to get stronger and I need greater chakra control. Well, Lee was more than a bit dazed now. Oh yeah, for chakra control you should see Neji or Hinata. No. I won't put Hinata at risk. His determination even surprised himself. His voice steadied and lowered. She's a lot stronger than most people would ever guess. Stronger than Sakura in many ways, but I don't think she's strong enough to help me with this, and I'm sure Neji isn't. Besides, I've been working with Kakashi-sensei and Yamato-sensei in that area. It's the raw power part that I'm really concerned with. Wait, you think Hinata is stronger than Neji? Lee paused. You think I'm stronger than Neji? Now he felt doubly dazed between that, and what Naruto said about Sakura liking him. Well, you're strong enough, or rather more importantly you are fast enough with your speed. If anything really bad happens you should be able to outrun me anyway. Really bad? Naruto, what do you mean? Naruto paused. Lee, you really don't want to know. After the time we saved Gaara from the Akatsuki a few months back, we had a follow-up mission to get some information on Orochimaru. Well, we actually ran into Orochimaru, things got ugly and I hurt Sakura. That's why I need your help and why I can't ask Hinata or any of the others, even Neji. You're the only one who might teach me this. Kakashi-sensei and none of the others would. It has got to be you. You hurt Sakura? Lee asked with a tinge of cold anger creeping into his voice. Lee, Naruto looked down in shame. I'm serious, you really don't want to know. I need more power to keep something else in its place. Right now Sasuke is more of a cover for my seeking greater power. Naruto, I don't know, it is forbidden for a reason. Naruto looked directly into his friend's eyes. Lee, I need more power so that never happens ever again. I don't want to ever hurt any of my friends ever again. Surely you can understand that. Lee looked at Naruto and realized that nothing, not even the Hokage herself, would stop him in this quest if that was his reason. Okay Naruto, I will try. One more thing. Naruto pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket. If I start to lose it, slap this seal on my forehead. Immediately, Lee looked confused but took the seal and looked at it. Naruto, I've never seen anything quite like this. It looks like a very powerful seal that was made just for you. Jiraiya made it. It works with my necklace. Although it's better to have Sensei Yamato around. Naruto looked at Lee. If it fails, just run, Lee, drop your weights and run. Find Kakashi and Yamato but don't stick around. Please, you've got to promise me that you will drop your weights and run. Drop my weights? Sure, Naruto, whatever you say. Lee paused, puzzled and disturbed by all that Naruto had told, but he took a deep breath and began. Well, what you're talking about is called the 8 inner gates, and they're basically limiters on the amount of chakra flow in your body. If you learn how to open them. Naruto spent the rest of the day listening to Lee, and trying to learn what his friend was telling him. Lee was stunned to see Naruto call up 100 shadow clones each time Lee made a point, disperse them after he worked on that point, and then call them up again for each new point. After seeing this several times with no sign of fatigue in Naruto, Lee was troubled. He simply couldn't figure out how much more power Naruto could possibly need. Lee had virtually no chakra himself, but he had spent a lot of time studying chakra in others. The sheer amount of chakra Naruto was using without any sign of fatigue was staggering and even a little frightening. Lee had also spent a lot of time reading about the Sandsound invasion, most especially anything about Gaara. He had been stunned that day to learn that Naruto had defeated Neji. He also had trouble coming to grips with how Sasuke faced Gaara before the Genjutsu had knocked him out. It had taken a lot of time and persistence, but after nearly a year and a half he had found the final report that had detailed the battle that led to Gaara's defeat. He had always had trouble believing the report, especially since the best account was from Kakashi-sensei's ninja hound Pakken. Naruto oddly enough had never bragged about the fight or gave any really solid details about it when debriefed. Sasuke never said anything either before he ran away. As far as Lee knew, and his official debriefing was nearly as sparse as Naruto's. Sakura was unconscious for the final fight, and the only other witness was the Sand Kunoichi Temari, who also never gave any real details about the fight, but she did say that Pakken's report was correct. Reading about hundreds or possibly thousands of clones, Gaara turning into a giant sand monster, and the giant toad Gamabunta had simply seemed too unreal when it was all tied to a not quite 13-year-old Naruto. Working with Naruto now and seeing how effortlessly he worked with hundreds of clones finally convinced Lee that the report he had read was, in fact, true. Hinata had stopped running and found herself a short time later in one of her sanctuaries. She was somewhat devastated from what she had just learned. Although often tempted, she really didn't follow Naruto around. She would covertly watch him any time they were in the same area, but she really didn't follow him. Every time she did watch him, she was waging a fierce internal battle within herself between her desire to talk to him and her fear that she would mess up somehow and he would dislike her. Even though she knew that he would never really dislike any one of his friends no matter what, she wanted more than friendship from him. The few times she had actually followed him was always due to something extraordinary. She had followed him around the village when she heard rumors of him having a baby. That had turned out rather embarrassing. She had followed him to the exit of Konoha when he left with Jiraiya years ago. She had been very upset with herself for a very long time after that because she hadn't been able to summon the courage to even do something as simple as say goodbye. Nothing she had ever seen in Naruto in the past had ever been as bad as today. She had seen him upset on a few occasions, and it never seemed to last very long. The only time that even came close to comparing to the state she had seen him in today was when he didn't graduate from the academy. That had lasted less than a day before he had somehow turned the tables and got his Hittite. None of their classmates had ever found out how he had done that, to her knowledge anyway. This time it was obvious to her that he hadn't been eating properly for a few days. She didn't think anything could turn off Naruto's appetite like that. After seeing his current state along with watching him turn away from Ichiraku's was enough for her to overcome her hesitant nature concerning Naruto and follow him to find out more. She sat at the edge of the pool near a small waterfall that was within one of Konoha's outer and less often used training grounds. Being near waters like this pool and waterfall almost always made her feel better. There was a small pond and small artificial waterfall in the Hyuga Gardens. Her mother had brought her there often before she died, and being near water with her mother were some of her earliest memories. Now she was at a total loss on even what to think, let alone what to do. She was still trying to come to terms with the fact that Naruto believed that nobody should love him. How could he possibly have come to that conclusion, she kept wondering. Naruto had said that he loved Sakura like a sister. For a brief moment her spirit soared when those words processed in her head. That quick flash of excruciating pain that appeared on his face as he said that though completely baffled her though. To hear him whisper that he didn't think anyone should love him had brought her spirit crashing down. Something devastating had happened to him. With a grim determination she decided that she was going to find out what it was, and no matter what she was going to help him. He never really knew how much he had helped her, and now she felt he needed someone to help him more than he ever had before. Her determination settled into her face, and she suddenly felt calm. Not quite a week had passed. Naruto was irritated with himself over his lack of success opening the 8 inner gates. The lack of sleep probably wasn't helping. So far he'd only been able to open the first one. Doing this project in secret along with a couple of others he had going wasn't helping. He was taking a break and eating some instant ramen in a cup while reading a pilfered scroll when someone knocked on the door. 1 second. He mumbled loudly through a mouth full of noodles as he hurriedly buried the scroll in a pile of typical jutsu scrolls he always had lying about his small apartment. It was for another one of his secret projects. Although the way he'd been feeling lately he hadn't done anything more than sneakily get some scrolls and partially read them. He glanced at the pile of scrolls, figured the ones to worry about were reasonably hidden, jumped up and opened the door. Sakura-chan. What's up? He beamed his typical smile for her, despite still imagining his claw marks on her arm. He also fought a strong urge to panic and glanced at the pile of scrolls. Come on, we've been ordered to see the Hokage. At least you're awake before noon this time. Looks like we've got a mission. His friend returned his smile as she grabbed his undamaged arm and pulled him out of his apartment, much to his relief. But Kakashi-sensei, Yamato-sensei and Sai are out on a mission. I thought we would be staying home for a little while. He stumbled over his words as Sakura dragged him along. He really didn't want to go out on a mission without one of his senseis. I'm sure Tsunade-sama will have everything taken care of. It didn't take long for the two friends to get to the Hokage's office. As they walked in, Naruto was slightly stunned to see Hinata and Jiraiya already there. Ero-sennin? You're still here? Naruto was greatly relieved to see Jiraiya and slightly nervous at the presence of Hinata. Naruto smiled at her, and she averted her eyes, but not before he saw a look of sadness in them. He couldn't quite puzzle it out exactly why, but this was somehow different from the glimpses he caught all the other times Hinata averted her gaze. No time for getting reacquainted, Naruto. You can do that on the mission. Tsunade scolded him. There's a chance that this one is actually going to be 2 C-rank missions. I have some sensitive documents for the Kazekage. You're to head to Suna, meet the Kazekage, hand the documents over personally, and then if needed help Sakura gather certain herbs that grow along the northern border of Wind. Most likely Suna will already have many of the plants that Sakura is looking for. If they have everything on her list you can return home, otherwise stay in the field until you find everything on that list. Make sure you get the written permission of the Kazekage though before you go wandering around the country of Wind. Hinata will be joining you as well. The gardens of Suna aren't likely to have everything. With the rest of her team out on other missions she's available, and she'll be a big help to Sakura. I don't know, Granny Tsunade, are you sure that Hinata should come with us? Do you really want her exposed to the likes of Ero-sennin here? Sakura at least is used to him, sort of, you know, and she's almost as strong as you are. So he isn't likely to try anything on her, but I'm not so sure he can be trusted with 2 attractive young women. Will you just die already? Jiraiya hit Naruto on his head, knocking him to the ground as both of the girls blushed, Sakura slightly, and Hinata brightly. And would you please knock it off with Ero-sennin? I am the wise and powerful Toad Sage. As much as I hate to admit it, you do have something of a point, but all 4 of you are going and that's final. If Suna doesn't have everything we need, Sakura will need Hinata's help to find the plants we need. Now go get ready. Tsunade answered. Naruto said I was attractive. But it's obvious he doesn't want me on the mission. Hinata thought to herself, as she was both elated and deflated by her thoughts, as she thought back to what Tsunade had told her before Naruto and Sakura arrived. I'm backing up Jiraiya-sama to scout out one of Orochimaru's lairs. Even though Orochimaru is supposedly dead, Tsunade-sama thinks it's still dangerous even for Jiraiya-sama. Not even Sakura is to know, although I think the whole helping to find special plants excuse is a little thin. I think I need more information. Naruto hung back as Tsunade dismissed them and the other 3 began to leave the Hokage's office. When they turned to look back at him he waved them off. Yes, Naruto? Tsunade asked suspiciously. Tsunade-sama. Naruto began. Finally, a little respect from you? This ought to be good. What do you want, Naruto? It's got to be something. Well, are you sure about Hinata or even Sakura? I'm sure Jiraiya and I could do this mission without them. He probably knows plants and stuff pretty well. Tsunade's gaze softened. I see this is really about the time you fought Orochimaru, isn't it? She asked. Well, yeah, I guess so. Naruto shuffled in place uncomfortably while he looked down shamefully, and slightly embarrassed. Listen, don't worry so much about it, Jiraiya will keep an eye on you. Besides, you 2 idiots would have a hard time finding sand in the desert if you were on your own. Now get out of here and go get ready. Naruto scurried out of Tsunade's office and ran down the hall, colliding with Jiraiya as he rounded a corner. Hey, calm down a bit, Naruto. The Toad Sage looked Naruto over. So what's on your mind that you needed to talk to Tsunade privately? Just stuff. Naruto shuffled around a bit, squirming under his teacher's gaze. Stuff, eh? You seem a bit overly concerned about the girls, kiddo. I don't think they figured that out, but I probably know you better than anyone. Yeah, well, that scar on your chest should make anyone pause, and now Sakura might have her own from me on her arm. I don't want to cause any more of those. Well, you know, we'll do our best. Keep calm, stick with me and everything will be fine. Jiraiya smiled as he spoke. Just around another corner stood Hinata. She felt slightly ashamed to have once again eavesdropped on Naruto, but she felt that there was too much going on that she didn't know, and she especially wanted to know what was bothering him so much. There was also too many secrets on such an apparently simple mission. What she heard between Jiraiya and Naruto puzzled her greatly. Leaving Konoha and traveling the 3 days to Suna was uneventful. Naruto and Jiraiya constantly bickered, Sakura was unusually quiet, and Hinata was typically reserved. Although Hinata, covertly of course, spent a great deal of her time completely enthralled watching the relationship between Jiraiya and Naruto, Gaara was having a busy day as Kazekage and didn't have much time for them. They handed over the pouch full of documents. Gaara shook Naruto's hand with a smile, seeming to enjoy making Naruto uncomfortable with that small token of friendship, which Hinata found rather odd. One of the many aides bustling in and out was told to take them to one of the guest suites. Jiraiya spoke briefly with Gaara before allowing the aide to lead them out. As soon as they left the Kazekage building, Sakura split off from the others. "I've got something to take care of, I'll meet up with you shortly," she said as she waved and walked away. It didn't take long for the rest of them to be shown where they'd be staying while in Suna. It was a nice suite with 2 bedrooms, each with its own bath. There was a large common area along with a small but fully equipped kitchen and eating area. Not bad, not quite as good as the dignitaries get, and not even close to what a visiting lord or lady would receive, but not bad. Jiraiya said with a smile. "Where do you think Sakura went?" Hinata asked. "Probably the cemetery," Naruto answered. "The cemetery? She became very attached to one of Suna's village elders last time we were here and is probably visiting Chiyo-sama's grave." "Chiyo?" Jiraiya mummed in. "The puppet master with a gift for poisons? Yeah, that's the one." "Did you know her?" Naruto asked his sensei. "Personally no, but I'm pretty sure that during one of the wars she and Tsunade grew to hate each other greatly." "Well, we should go find Sakura and see about dinner." "Excuse me, are you Naruto?" A small child approached the orange and black-clad ninja. "Eh? Of course I am. Thank Naruto-san for saving Gaara-sama." The small child handed Naruto a small flower, turned and ran off into the crowd. "What?" Naruto stood there stunned, holding the flower as he watched the child disappear into the crowd. "I guess a lot of people know how you helped save Gaara. He's become quite popular with the younger people of this village, you know." Jiraiya smiled. The trio turned and entered the cemetery. Sakura was easy to spot off to the far edge. "Sakura! Come on, let's go! We're going to get something to eat!" Naruto yelled out. "Fool!" Jiraiya hissed. "This is a cemetery, keep your voice down." It didn't take long for Sakura to walk up and glare at Naruto. The 4 wound their way through the streets of Suna with the 3 teenagers giving Jiraiya the lead. It didn't take long for Jiraiya to locate a restaurant he deemed suitable. Dinner was an oddly quiet time. Naruto seemed to have finally learned not to complain, at least not out loud when a meal wasn't ramen. Most of the food was a bit spicier than what was typical in Konoha, but quite tasty and filling. They wandered a bit through Suna, but they were all tired from the journey, so they headed back to their suite. Sakura and Hinata decided to wash up a bit, while Jiraiya headed off to the room he was sharing with Naruto to get some writing in. Naruto decided to stretch out and relax in the common area. Several minutes went by as he was fiddling with the small flower, while seemingly half asleep. "Naruto, if you want to save that, I can show you how," Hinata said with a slight stutter as she entered the common area. "Oh. Sure, Hinata," Naruto exclaimed as he popped out of his slight daze. "We'll need a book. Hey Ero-sennin! We need one of your spare books." Hinata found a way to actually make one of those dirty books useful. Naruto glanced over with a smile at the blushing Hinata and his eyes grew wide. "Hinata! I didn't mean that you would want to read one of his trashy novels or anything like that." Naruto looked close to panic as Hinata's blush grew brighter. "What's that?" Jiraiya entered the common area with a lecherous grin. "I was just going to show Naruto how to press his flower so he could keep it, Jiraiya-sama," Hinata said quietly as she looked down to hide her blush. "Press his flower? You two have got to be 2 of the most boring teenagers I've ever even heard of." Although Tsunade would kill me for, Jiraiya was actually scowling as he left the room, still muttering about his own death, and Swanda. "I'm sorry, Hinata, I should have known better with him." "That's okay, Naruto, I really don't mind. Here you go, I actually had a blank book. Now none of us have to worry about anything," Jiraiya said as he re-entered the common area. Hinata took the book, took the small flower from Naruto, placed it roughly in the middle of the book and closed it. "It really should be a heavier book to properly press the flower," she said with a slight blush as she handed the book to Naruto. "Thanks, Hinata, this is great. Okay, enough you two. We're going to get an early start tomorrow, so it's off to bed. Come on, Naruto. Hinata, tell Sakura that we'll be receiving the plants and herbs we were looking for on our way out tomorrow," Jiraiya said as he left. "Hi, Jiraiya-sama," she answered. "Well, good night, Hinata, thanks again," Naruto said as he turned to the bedroom. "You're welcome, Naruto-kun, good night." Hinata stood there staring at the bedroom door Naruto had gone through before breathing a small sigh and heading into the girl's room. The next morning Jiraiya was good on his word, waking his 3 young charges and getting them going before sunrise. They were able to actually use the small kitchen to prepare a light breakfast before heading out. About halfway to the gate they ran into Gaara, who apparently had been waiting for them. "I'm sorry I don't have more time. Jiraiya-san let me know yesterday that you would be heading out very early. Here's everything we had that was on your list, Sakura." One of the herbalists left a list of the missing ones inside. "I also brought your passes," he said as the 4 approached, and he handed a package to Sakura before turning and handing some papers to Jiraiya. "Thank you, Gaara-sama," Sakura said with a slight bow. "That's okay, it's still good to see you." Naruto jumped in as he peered closely at his friend. You should stop by Konoha soon. You know those bags around your eyes are fading. Yes, without Shikaku I can finally sleep peacefully. Cool, remember what I said though, you should visit us when you get a chance. I'll keep that in mind. Gaara reached out his hand and this time Naruto grasped it without hesitation. See you soon then. The four turned and headed off while Gaara smiled just a bit as he watched his friend leave. They traveled almost directly north and slightly to the west for almost 2 whole days until they got to the edge of a large forest. Trees? I thought most of Wind Country is desert. We aren't at the border yet, are we? Naruto piped up looking confused. Actually, a good chunk is heavily forested, especially near Bird Country, along their northern border, Jiraiya-sama. Hinata whispered and nodded slightly. The Sannin concentrated along the direction Hinata indicated. Looks like a sand ninja patrol. A few moments passed and 4 sand ninja appeared before them, 3 of which looked very young. You guys are a little off of and of the trade routes that visiting ninja are supposed to stick to while in wind. You're even further than most from Konoha ought to be. The older and obviously lead ninja spoke as he warily eyed Jiraiya and the 3-leaf ninja. That's quite alright. Jiraiya said as he walked forward and pulled out the papers Gaara had given him. We've got dispensation from the Kazekage to look for some special herbs near the northern border of Wind Country. The leader took the papers and looked them over. Good, everything looks like it's in order thankfully. By the look of you guys, the last thing I'd want to get into would be a fight with you while I've got a bunch of green genin on their first patrol. That's understandable. How far are we from the border anyway? Jiraiya asked. It's about 40 kilometers or so further along. It's been pretty quiet lately. We've finished our sweep and are heading home ourselves now. The older sand ninja glanced at the papers again and looked up in surprise at Naruto and Sakura. I didn't realize it was you two. My apologies for the delay. Us two? Naruto asked puzzled. Naruto and Sakura. You two were 2 of the leaf ninja who helped rescue Gaara-sama. He bowed deeply to the 2 teenagers. Thank you. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'd do it for any one of my friends. The older sand ninja smiled. Thank you anyway. We do have to go though. With a wave all 4 sand ninja faded from sight. Don't let that stuff go to your head, Naruto. Jiraiya said as he smacked Naruto lightly on his head. Let's go now. I think it's about 5 maybe 6 kilometers more before we can even start looking for what Sakura needs. Looks like we'll get to that area with just enough time to set up camp for the night. The 4 headed off expecting to stop in a little less than an hour. So is the trap ready? One shadowed figure in a black cloak with red clouds spoke to another. Yes. They've killed too many of us. It's a bad habit that we're going to break. With Orochimaru now gone, we were able to acquire many sound ninja for this job along with the many grass and cloud ninja we had already hired. If Kakuzu were still alive, he'd be most upset over the expense of this operation. We've also lost track of Itachi's brother, but I'm sure we'll be hearing from him soon. With him out for Itachi, it is now a priority to deal with these leaf ninja. All of the hired ninja on this job have very explicit orders not to kill Naruto, but I offered 10 million ryu for Jiraiya's head and 5 million for Sakura's. The larger figure draped in black with red clouds replied. What about the Hyuga? She really doesn't matter to us. Although I imagine the cloud ninja will be out to capture her for the Byakugan, probably alive. If the grass ninja realize who she is and what she means to the cloud ninja, they'll probably kill her and try to destroy her body. You don't think they'll try to capture her themselves? No, they're too small compared to Cloud. They're likely to take a chance to kill her in order to prevent Cloud from gaining the Byakugan. I doubt they're willing to take the risk of upsetting Cloud to gain it for themselves. Everything sounds good then. This looks like a decent spot. Jiraiya said as they entered a wide clearing. Hinata hesitated. Something wasn't quite right. She looked over to Jiraiya, who suddenly grew still. Byakugan, she called out. She was stunned to see dozens upon dozens of ninja off in the distance. She looked further and realized they were surrounded. Jiraiya-sama, she said softly but urgently. Yeah, I sense them too. What's going on? Naruto and Sakura both asked. We're surrounded. Jiraiya whispered. What do we have, Hinata? At least several hundred, I would say. There could be many clones, but it doesn't matter, they've got a tremendous amount of power. I'd say that many if not most of them are Jounin level. Hinata said as she relaxed her Byakugan. It'd take them a minute or so to reach them, and she knew that she would soon need every scrap of chakra she had. The 4 stood in a loose circle, each facing a different direction, and waited. It didn't take long before the first attack came. A wave-like mass of rolling rock and earth bore down on them. Naruto and Hinata jumped off together in one direction while Sakura and Jiraiya flew the other way. Fire suddenly poured over the first attack and a vortex of water flew towards Sakura and Jiraiya, driving them further away from their 2 teammates. As Sakura and Jiraiya readied themselves, several tornadoes headed their way. There was an odd shimmering behind the spinning masses of air and lightning crackled within the clouds over the tornadoes. Katon! Gakakyu no Jutsu! Jiraiya yelled out as he generated a massive fireball that impacted most of the approaching tornadoes. Damn, he's at least as fast as Kakashi is when making seals. Sakura thought as she watched Jiraiya's hands blur again. Futon Sakura missed the rest of what Jiraiya was saying as the tornadoes and fireball exploded, but she knew enough to duck as Jiraiya fired off an incredible mass of destructive air. Sakura! Jiraiya called out as he jumped over to her, grabbing her as his hair expanded and wrapped around the two of them. Sakura's last sight before being enclosed was seeing that the shimmering behind the air and lightning attacks was revealed to be some sort of sonic attack. There was an odd humming as Jiraiya's spiky shield of hair absorbed the sonic attack. Jiraiya staggered slightly as his hair receded. Apparently with his hair being connected to his head it allowed some of the sonic energy to get to his ears. Before he could shake it off though, an unbelievable amount of huge boulders came crashing their way. There's just no way any single ninja could have pulled off such a massive earth attack by themselves. Sakura thought as the uncountable boulders rolled their way. This time it was her turn to grab the slightly stunned Jiraiya. She jumped over to the side a bit and picked one of the larger rocks heading their way. Building up her own ridiculous strength, she quickly but carefully eyed the monster rock, screaming out. Her free arm blurred as she struck the rock dozens of times in a very precise manner. Both her and Jiraiya were struck numerous times by a large amount of shrapnel flying off the rock from Sakura's strikes. There was a loud boom as the rock teetered and fell on top of them. Dust billowed out, and the area was suddenly still. The ninjas that had been focusing on Sakura and Jiraiya turned to look across the field at their other two targets. As they looked, they saw the girl fall. The battle raged on. Naruto had lost track of Sakura and Jiraiya, but Hinata was always nearby. Her arms would blur from time to time, and every attack that came close to her failed. Naruto seemed to be everywhere at times, and with his shadow clones he pretty much was everywhere at times. Dozens of ninjas surrounded the two. Naruto and Hinata found themselves standing back to back. Shago Hakurokuji Yanshu. She softly spoke as she once again began her ultimate defense. Naruto began to build up chakra in each hand. Rasengan. He muttered as a shimmering sphere appeared in each hand. Shuriken, kunai, and all manner of weapons were repelled by Hinata's defense as it encompassed herself and Naruto. On your right, she whispered. Taking her cue, Naruto darted out, releasing a Rasengan into the chest of one enemy that came within his range. Hinata shifted slightly so he was continuously covered. He quickly formed a new Rasengan and returned to being up against Hinata's back. On my left, front and right, low, she said in her soft voice. Naruto spun and from behind Hinata he reached forward under her arms. He released the two Rasengans. One went to the fist of a cloud ninja and the other to a kicking foot of a grass ninja. Naruto and Hinata easily heard splintering bone as the two Rasengans hit. Pulling his arms back he spun so they were back to back again as he formed two more Rasengans. Above on your right, she whispered, and he struck. Your lower left front, my front center. This odd dance-like combination of Hinata's defense and Naruto's attack continued to protect them while eliminating another half-dozen attacking ninja before the rest stopped and pulled back. Naruto had never formed so many Rasengans so rapidly before, and Hinata had never used her Shago Hakurokuji Yanshu for so long before, and the strain was especially evident on Hinata. Ha! Naruto exclaimed. We're unbeatable together, Hinata. He smiled over his shoulder at the suddenly blushing young woman as they both began to breathe heavily from the strain. More than slightly distracted, she faltered and Hinata suddenly fell. She had been using her Shago Hakurokuji Yanshu for too long and probably would have fallen soon anyway from exhaustion. One of the seemingly endless attacks struck her with a glancing blow while she was blushing from Naruto's words. Naruto's heart grew suddenly still as he watched Hinata fall to the ground beside him. He didn't see that it was a glancing blow. He only saw a lot of blood since it was a messy scalp wound, and a terrible anger took him. The fox's chakra shroud enveloped him, immediately springing forth 4 tails, and then it slowly formed a 5th. The chakra seemed to boil as his blood began to flow through his very pores. All consciousness gone, he roared at their foes. A second or two passed. Unnoticed, Hinata shook herself awake as the possessed Naruto leaped over her to attack the closest, and therefore most dangerous seeming of all the attacking ninja. She looked on in shock at the sight, and even the smell of Naruto's blood. The ninja before him fell. She almost gagged when she realized the ninja was now 2 separate smoldering pieces. Both of Naruto's arms suddenly seemed to stretch into unbelievable lengths, as he killed at least 2 more of the surrounding ninja. A massive wave shuriken and kunai was suddenly in the air flying towards them. The possessed Naruto roared and they all vanished into puffs of flame and ash. Hinata gasped as she noticed that most if not all of the bubbles coming through the strange chakra envelope surrounding him would pop when they passed the edge of the envelope, and splatter a small amount of Naruto's blood. She activated her Byakugan to see what was happening to Naruto, and found herself peering into what she felt to be Naruto's very soul. She felt pulled into Naruto to find herself in an odd sort of utility tunnel system before a sealed, massive gate. I'm inside Naruto somehow, she thought to herself. She began to realize as she walked forward and looked through the bars that there was some sort of foul creature locked in behind the bars. A second later she gasped as she realized it was the 9-tailed fox demon. Looking deeper into the shadows beyond the bars, she was horrified as she realized that Naruto was also within the bars, captive of the evil monster fox. The 9-tailed fox is within Naruto? She was confused, but so many things were starting to make sense now. She suddenly remembered his whisper that Lee hadn't heard. I don't think anyone should love me like that anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought. This is why, but I love you, Naruto. A grim determination took hold of her. Let him go, she screamed at the demon. Hyuga, the creature replied as it noticed her. First an Uchiha, now a Hyuga, of course both families would be able to see me here. Although you the demon paused as it regarded her. You shouldn't be able to come here. It paused again. Whatever, this is none of your concern. I am not some caged creature in a zoo to be peered at, not even by the likes of you. Nearly blinded by tears she reached for Naruto. The fox demon lashed out at her but the bars separated them. I will not let you have him. She screamed at the monster as she built up her own chakra and ran through the bars. One of the fox's tails lashed out, knocking her out of the caged area while the demon maintained its grip on Naruto. Naruto. She whispered as the tears continued to flow from her eyes. Because of Naruto, I never go back on my word. For Naruto I will never give up, she thought to herself as she pulled herself up from the floor. You will not have him, she screamed out. She steadied herself and slowly walked forward. Shugohaku Rokuji Yanshu, she said as she passed the bars again. The monster lashed out again, fully intending to destroy the young woman, but it flinched away from the blue light of her chakra as it suddenly intensified and she blocked one of the monster's striking tails. Again and again the demon struck out at her, and each time she parried its attacks as she relentlessly bore down on the fox. You dare challenge me for this whelp? Fine then, have him. You have managed to both sicken and amuse me with your love, determination and courage. The demon hurled Naruto into her, propelling both through the bars to the safety of the open area on the other side of those bars. You have him, now leave my sight, Hyuga. As they landed, Naruto became aware of her and spoke. Hinata? What are you doing here? How did you even get here? Neither of them was able to say anything else as they were suddenly pulled back to the outside world. Naruto stumbled as the demon fox chakra shroud and power disappeared. The last foe in the immediate area found himself suddenly released from the paralyzing fear of seeing the fox chakra shrouded Naruto up close, dodged to the side to avoid Naruto and found Hinata open to attack. The ninja lashed out with a thin metal javelin, striking Hinata in the back. Still shaking from the sight of the possessed Naruto up close, the ninja stumbled on a loose piece of rock that threw his aim off. The javelin shot through her chest, missing her heart but piercing her lung to exit out through the front of her lower rib cage. Hinata! Naruto screamed, his strength flaring back to life. He spun, leaping back he struck their foe. The grass ninja was sent hurtling into the distance, disappearing into the trees at the edge of the clearing, and Naruto caught Hinata as she fell. Naruto! She whispered as she winced in pain. Hinata-chan, don't talk, you'll be okay. The tears in his eyes gave light to his words. Chan? She coughed up blood but smiled as the minor but precious word crossed her lips. She had longed to hear that one little word from him tied to her name for so many years. Naruto-chan, she paused as she coughed up more blood. Naruto-chan, I love you. She looked up into his eyes and reached up as trembling took over her movements to softly touch his cheek as Naruto's eyes grew wide. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Scenes flashed before his eyes. Hinata at the Chunin exam offering her answers to him. Hinata giving him the healing salve after his fight with Kiba. Hinata looking up to him with determination as she faced Niji in the Chunin match. Hinata at the log where he became a genin just before his fight with Niji. Hinata at the hospital after his second fight with Mizuki. Hinata in his arms after she knocked out the giant bee. Hinata in the cave protecting him from the rock fall during the treasure hunting mission. Hinata defending him from the magnetic ninja during their Nano Country mission. The scenes all blurred together, and as he looked into her eyes he suddenly remembered that it was Hinata that stood up to the nine-tailed fox for him just a moment ago. Hinata, I love you too, Naruto softly said, but loud enough that she heard. It was more than words, he realized. Something he couldn't describe clicked into place within him. Hinata smiled at him as her eyes grew wide from his words and her own tears sprang forth. With another cough she closed her eyes and passed out. Looking at her in his arms with the javelin running through her, and her blood flowing, he started to shake. For the second time in his life he looked at her blood on his hand. Naruto felt a growing rage, greater than anything he'd ever experienced before. She had not only accepted him with the damn fox inside him, but she told him that she loved him despite the foul thing. Now she was being taken away from him. Someone actually loved him in a way he never thought anybody could or even should, and now they were being torn away from him. The rage flowed even greater. It was a wave of white-hot fury that burned away everything, leaving him oddly calm. Dozens if not hundreds of enemy ninja began to appear at the edge of the field, and swiftly approached the two-leaf ninja. I'm going to kill all of you, he said in a guttural growl of a voice as his eyes shifted to the slits of the Kyuubi. This time though, instead of the regular red color of the Kyuubi eyes, they took on an aura of blue flames, perfectly matching his own eye color. Time seemed to stand still. The ground no longer seemed to shake. The approaching ninja seemed frozen. Lee, my friend, I thank you and I'm sorry I have to use what you showed me. The strangely calm Naruto thought to himself as he slowly eased Hinata to the ground, closed his eyes and stood up. Kaimon release. He hadn't been able to open any more than the first gate before. Even though Lee only showed and explained the process to him that one time, Naruto had tried every chance he could sneak off. He was sure that with enough time he would have mastered this, but time was one thing he had been incredibly short on lately. Those few times he had been able to get away from his friends and teachers, no matter how many clones he made, he always got stuck after the first gate. This time was different. Kyumon release, Simon release, Shaman release, Tomon release, Keemon release, Kaiamon release. They all opened with ease this time. I'm sorry too, Hinata. I should have realized sooner. I really am the Leaf Village's knucklehead ninja, he thought as he opened his eyes and looked at her for what he truly believed was going to be the last time as the ground around them shook even more violently with his power. He closed his eyes again. Shimon release. The world seemed to explode. Naruto was bathed in a blinding aura of blue chakra fire. Once again he stood before the massive gate that held the nine-tailed fox. What? Are you back already? Are you that weak? The demon snarled and then glared at him. How's your girlfriend? The dark beast chuckled. Naruto's fury lashed out at the monster, and for the first time it pulled back ever so slightly. Never before had it encountered a rage that came close to matching its own. I'm not asking this time, fox. He screamed as he reached out, and somehow tore the nine-tailed fox's chakra from the demon. He opened his eyes and looked around at the multitudes of foes that had hesitated while approaching him. The demon fox's aura suddenly poured out beyond the blue fire of Naruto's own chakra. Somehow the massive outflow of his own chakra was shielding him from the insane amounts of red chakra of the demon fox. The blue and red mixed as Naruto began to take the form of the nine-tailed fox demon and started growing. This Naruto fox though was a nearly glowing white with highlights of blue and red chakra fire. The huge Naruto beast monster raised its head and howled as its nine tails flailed about, decimating dozens of ninja, sending body parts and blood flying in all directions. Off in the distance, Sakura found herself shaken awake by the monster's rage. It could only have been seconds earlier when she had used her insane strength to hollow out a small section of one of the boulders that had almost crushed her and Jiraiya. Gathering her strength, she yelled out, and while focusing her chakra slightly differently than when she created the hollow, she hit the rock above them a few times, causing it to fracture and crack into several pieces. With a groan, she managed to push one of the pieces of the massive rock off of herself and Jiraiya, freeing them from the enclosed space that had trapped them. It was almost too much for her despite her massive inhuman strength. Her eyes grew wide as she saw the monstrous and growing white fox form in the distance. Using her medical jutsu, she quickly revived Jiraiya. Whoa, that was worse than a knight trying to outdrink Tsunade, the Toad Sage muttered, his ears still ringing from both the sonic attack and the multiple head strikes he had taken when Sakura carved out that little safe spot. His own eyes suddenly grew wide at the sight of the huge white monster fox. As he counted 9 tails, his mouth fell open and he visibly paled. Naruto, he whispered. The white monster reared up on its hind legs and intense balls of chakra began to form at not only both of its front paws/hands but also one at the tip of each one of its tails, that had all stopped flailing and had spread out. Far off in the distance they heard what was obviously Naruto's voice, although it was heavily distorted. Rasengan. Oh no. Sakura, we have to leave. The Toad Sage anxiously looked at the 11 Rasengans, each slowly growing to nearly a full meter across. He gathered a tremendous amount of chakra, bit his thumb, began to form seals and called out while slamming his palm to the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. Gamabunta appeared and immediately spied the white monster. Jiraiya, what is that? The huge toad demanded while scowling, eyeing the Naruto fox in the distance. I hope you don't expect me to fight whatever that thing is. That thing is Naruto, and right now we need to immediately get out of here. He's about to live up to his name, Sake. His name, Sake? Sakura asked. Yes. The maelstrom. Again Naruto's odd voice was heard. Rasen Shuriken. Jiraiya's eyes widened in fear as the 11 huge balls of rapidly rotating chakra began to seemingly swirl, developing an edge as the Naruto fox began to mold all of the Rasengan spheres, infusing them with elemental wind energy. Naruto spoke again. Rasen Shuriken Kyuubi Naruto. The 11 Rasen Shurikens continued to grow and slowly began to spin around in a massive circle, each one jumping between Naruto's hands and tails. They began to circle overhead even faster and slowly began to merge together. Despite spinning rapidly individually, they slowly began to form a massive spinning torus. As they watched, it began to expand into a larger and larger ring of energy. The sky began to darken and rain began to fall. How did he pull that off? Jiraiya muttered as he watched the now dark sky begin to swirl around Naruto. Somehow Naruto had pulled elemental water energy into the mix. Suddenly the white monster stood within a circle of sunlight as the center of the spinning clouds above began to open. In a short time it was looking all the world like the white monster was standing within the eye of a natural hurricane. Jiraiya, can you see who that is on the ground under Naruto? I think it might be Hinata, but I can't make them out. Sakura asked. It looks like a dark-haired young woman with a leaf head protector around her neck. She has a spear of some sort sticking out of her chest. The chief toad spoke. Well, I guess we now know what drove Naruto over the edge. Unfortunately, we can't stay here. Once he releases that thing, it'll destroy everything for kilometers. I'd say that if Hinata is still alive, she's probably the only one that even has a chance of surviving this. He's pouring truly ridiculous amounts of not only the fox's chakra into that thing but his own as well. In fact, it looks like far more of Naruto's chakra is mixed in than I would have ever imagined possible. Looks like Naruto picked up how to open the 8 inner gates used for the Lotus sequence somewhere along the line. It also looks like he's pulling off the perfect destructive mixture of air and water elements. Jiraiya said, The Lotus? Sakura paled as she remembered what that jutsu had done to her friend Lee. Master Jiraiya, can you tell how many gates Naruto has opened? the pink-haired young woman nearly whispered as she hung her head. Jiraiya scowled but knew he couldn't lie now. I'd say all of them. Seriously though, if we don't want to die we have to leave immediately. Naruto almost killed me with 4 tails. I don't think I really need to see firsthand what would happen now that he's got all 9. Especially since it looks like the fox isn't controlling this. It looks like a combination of Naruto's grief and fury. So that Naruto Fox thing will have all of Naruto's skills, techniques and determination backed up by the full power of the 9-tailed fox. Couple all of that with what is probably some bizarre synthesis of Naruto's and the fox's fury feeding each other. With that he grabbed Sakura and leaped to the chief toad's back. As the giant toad leaped away at astonishing speed, Jiraiya looked back and was struck by the scene of imminent destruction they were fleeing. It was oddly beautiful with blue and red chakra flames pouring off of the white fox form while it stood in the center of the ring of energy that spun over its head. The sky had grown completely dark with swirling clouds covering everything in darkness, except for that shaft of sunlight streaming down that oddly centered on Hinata. They must have traveled dozens of kilometers when they felt the earth itself shake and Gamabunta was actually knocked flat as a wave of energy passed over them. Jiraiya and Sakura were struck from the toad's back but managed to land on their feet. The whole world seemed to vibrate as the blast wave dissipated into the distance. Silently they leaped back to the humongous toad's back and without a word Gamabunta turned and began to hop back the way they had fled from. It wasn't many hops at all when they came to a seemingly endless expanse of water-soaked and flattened trees. The drenched landscape of shattered timber seemed to go on for kilometers before turning into another seemingly endless expanse. This time the trees were gone, leaving nothing but shattered earth and rock. As they got closer and closer to the center, the shattered rocks were becoming smaller and smaller to finally become a finely ground sand that was turning to mud as the light rain fell. It became obvious that they were within an unbelievable hole that was starting to fill with water. A shaft of rock appeared in the distance, through the mist of the light rain. It looked like it was in the middle of the newly formed lake that Gamabunta continued to hop across. As they got close to the pillar they could see 2 figures lying together on the untouched grass that covered the top of the newly formed pillar. Naruto, Hinata. Sakura whispered as she leaped across from Gamabunta's back to the edge of the pillar. She timidly took a step forward as she gazed at her 2 friends together. Hinata was lying in Naruto's arms while Naruto was slumped over her on his knees. Sakura was frozen in place. They were both so still, tears formed in her eyes. She heard a soft groan and her eyes grew wide as she realized that at least one of them had survived that incredible event and was alive. Naruto, Hinata! She yelled as she broke into a run, quickly closing the distance between her and her friends. Hinata was paler than usual. Sakura gasped as she realized that Naruto was kneeling in a pool of Hinata's blood. Sakura saw the javelin in Hinata's chest move slightly as the young woman continued to breath shallowly. Naruto seemed completely still and Sakura feared the worst. He had one hand on Hinata's chest between her directly over her heart. Running up she gathered her own chakra and began to treat Hinata with her medical jutsu. She was stunned that she didn't need to steady the young woman's pulse as she slowly pulled the steel javelin out. There was surprisingly little blood. Sakura worried that most of her friend's blood was already gone, absorbed into the ground. Sakura pulled back in shock as she felt through her medical soft blue tendrils of chakra pull the wound closed. The tendrils started to fade but before they vanished she was stunned to sense that they traveled through Hinata and seemed to emanate from Naruto's hand. Seeing that there wasn't much more she could do for Hinata she focused on Naruto. Outwardly he seemed surprisingly unhurt, all things considered, but he was still a mass of cuts and bruises. As she began her medical jutsu Sakura could sense at least a dozen minor fractures throughout his body. Much like the time they fought Orochimaru, when she saw his 4 tails form, Naruto's wounds were healing much slower than usual for him. If he was even healing at all this time, she worried. In fact, somehow Naruto was enabling Hinata to heal faster than he himself usually healed. As Sakura probed deeper she realized that Naruto had virtually no detectable chakra left. Apparently he had picked up the ability to transfer his chakra to another. He probably somehow taught himself that after he had given his chakra to Gaara through Chiyo-sama when she revived Gaara. Sakura thought. It wasn't Chiyo-sama jutsu thankfully, and Sakura didn't recognize it from anything she had learned from Tsunade. She sighed and began to transfer some of her own chakra to Naruto. She was stunned when she felt her chakra immediately flow out of Naruto through his hand and into Hinata. That won't do, she muttered. She pulled Naruto's hand away from Hinata and once again began to transfer chakra. Somehow a small trickle still flowed to Hinata, but as Sakura began to let out a sigh of relief she sensed the chakra in Naruto's shift, and again it began to flow into Hinata only. This time it was going through his other hand and into her through her shoulder. Sakura sighed again in frustration as Jiraiya walked up. We have to get them back to the hospital in Konoha as soon as possible. I can't do any more for them here. They really need Tsunade, but I think they're going to be fine, Naruto-chan. They turned to the sound of Hinata's ragged whisper even though the young woman didn't wake up. Naruto muttered something that wasn't really audible in his own ragged whisper, also without waking up. Jiraiya, Sakura and Gamabunta looked at the two in wry amusement as they noticed that somehow Naruto and Hinata wound up holding hands. Sakura decided that they shouldn't separate them when they put the two on Gamabunta's back, and they stayed that way for the entire journey back to Konoha. It caused a bit of a stir when the hospital staff wasn't willing to separate the two and they had to have adjoining beds as the two held onto each other's hand while they stayed unconscious. It was getting late into the afternoon when Kakashi entered Tsunade's office. So? Tsunade asked as Kakashi stood before her. Well, it's much like Jiraiya's initial report. Imagine a similar effect to what we saw in Kakuzu's body, only on the very earth itself spread over a circle at least a kilometer in diameter, and that's just the primary impact zone. Although it doesn't sound quite right for this, we're going with impact. Outside of the central safe area, the primary impact goes nearly 15 meters into the ground. Looks like it practically liquefied the very bedrock itself. I think if we looked at the training area where Yamato and Naruto developed the Rasen Shuriken, we'll probably find similar effects. I don't think those craters received any sort of extensive study. Judging by how extensive the destruction was over in Wind, there wouldn't seem to be any survivors from any of the ninja that attacked them. Although we have a report that a single Cloud ninja involved made it back to Kumo. At the site itself, though, there's very little evidence at all. I doubt we'll ever even know something as simple as how many there were. We have some additional intelligence from the Grass and Cloud villages, but not much directly related to the attack. We'll most likely be able to at least find out how many ninja those two villages hired out for this attack, but I doubt we'll get much more than that. So you mean that more than 2 villages were involved in this? At least 3. We found a nearly destroyed sound headband. Sound? I guess that should be expected if the reports about Orochimaru's death are true. Has there been anything along official lines from either the Cloud or Grass villages? With the Grass village being a minor village, we're expecting them to lay low. Odds are that they lost a significant percentage of their high-level shinobi to this, even if they lost only a couple of dozen or so. We have better intelligence assets at the hidden Cloud village, and we're expecting something official from the Raikage, Kakashi said as he took note that Tsunade left the possibility of Orochimaru's survival open. Official? Why is that? Well, word has it that the Kazekage is most upset with the whole matter on an official level, since the whole thing basically amounted to an invading army entering Wind Country. Apparently word has also spread that a close personal friend of the Kazekage was one of the Leaf Ninjas involved, and so he is also greatly upset on a personal level. Another thing, it seems that it was leaked out that one of the Hyuga clan was seriously hurt in this mess, although word hasn't gotten out that it was the Hyuga heir. Do you think that information has gotten to Kumo yet? Looks that way. We're pretty sure that the Raikage will maintain his seat, but at the very least it is looking like there's going to be a bunch of open seats on their council shortly. Really? Well, with tensions high between lightning and water lately, I doubt the Raikage wants to add Konoha and Suna to the list of people aligned against him. Toss in that this is dredging up the whole Hyuga fiasco again over there, and with nothing more than a few messages we can probably make the Raikage sweat quite a bit. Tsunade actually smiled at this. It wasn't a pleasant or happy smile. In fact, Kakashi almost stepped back from the obvious anger smoldering behind that smile. Actually, I believe that Hayashi is considering requesting permission from you to declare a family vendetta against a clan or two in Kumo over this. I may just grant him that. Tsunade looked at the reports on Hinata and Naruto. I may even declare one myself. She murmured softly. That would be a bit unusual, wouldn't it? Perhaps, but it may just convince them to knock this garbage off. Maybe I should simply adopt Naruto. She paused, looking thoughtful. Since word is going around that the Kazekage is upset over his personal friend being hurt, I think it would be a good idea to leak out that person is also a personal friend of the Hokage as well. We'll hold off on anything like adoption. Kakashi looked a bit startled at that. Of course. Tsunade picked up Hinata's report. How is she doing anyway? Well, she did wake up a short time ago, and she refuses to leave Naruto's side. The doctors are reluctant to even try to separate the two since that odd link is still in place. In fact, they've requested that you personally come as soon as possible to examine them now that she's awake. That sounds like a good idea. I'd like to talk to Hinata as well. Go get that damn pervert and Sakura and meet me there. If I get a chance to talk to her privately, just hang out near their room. I'll leave the door closed if that's the case. Tsunade got up and headed for the door as Kakashi nodded and disappeared in a poof of smoke. It didn't take long for Tsunade to get to the room holding Hinata and Naruto. She quietly let herself in to find Hinata sitting in a chair next to the bed holding Naruto's hand as they both seemed to be asleep. There was the slightest smile on Hinata's face. Ahem. Tsunade said softly after walking up to them. Hinata's eyes flashed open to see the Hokage standing over her. Her pale eyes darted to Naruto's hand in her own and darted back to Tsunade as a soft blush filled her cheeks with color. Tsunade was pleased that the young woman continued to hold Naruto's hand despite the fact that doing so was a source of embarrassment. Lady Hokage-sama, relax. Hinata, please call me Tsunade. Seems you've gotten pretty deep into this with Naruto, haven't you? Hinata's soft blush flared to a bright crimson. Well, you see, I said relax. It's obvious that you care deeply for him. I'd like to hear what happened from you. Well, you know that we were attacked by a large number of ninja. Hinata looked up at Tsunade. Yes, go on. I've already talked to Jiraiya and Sakura. Just tell me what happened with you and Naruto. We had gotten separated from Jiraiya and Sakura and were fighting them off back to back. The young woman looked down and whispered. It's all my fault. What? Tsunade bent down and lightly lifted Hinata's face with her finger under Hinata's chin to see that tears had started welling up in the girl's eyes. Don't believe that, Hinata, but it is. We were doing so well, none of them could get past my defense. I was leaving openings for them to attack and letting Naruto know about incoming attacks that he would be better at taking out than I would be. Naruto was knocking any out that got close with Rasengan after Rasengan. He even fired off 2 Rasengans at one time. I continued to use my Byakugan to give him direction on where to attack. Hinata's voice dropped to a whisper. It was incredible. Wait, Naruto was using multiple Rasengans? In quick succession? Was he using his clones? He almost always had one in each hand, and yes, he was able to create a replacement Rasengan in less than a second every time he used one. There wasn't enough room for any clones. In fact, Naruto had to crouch most of the time to stay within my Shugohack. There just wasn't enough space for a clone. So do you know how many Rasengans he used? At least a dozen? She paused, looking down at the floor again. Hinata, it's okay, you can tell me. He told me that we were unbeatable together. A tear rolled down her cheek. I couldn't believe that he said that about me, and an attack slipped through. I was knocked to the ground and blacked out for a brief moment. That's why I know it was my fault. She hesitated and looked at Tsunade. I was only out for a second or so, and when I looked up, Naruto was, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. I can't betray Naruto. She looked down, stared at the floor, and wouldn't go on. She thought about the monster inside her love and just couldn't bring herself to tell someone else. Her knuckles briefly turned white as she tightened her grip on Naruto's hand for a moment. It was Naruto's secret, and she wouldn't give that up to anyone, not even to the Hokage. Did he change Hinata? Tsunade looked at the poor girl and took Hinata's free hand within her own. It's okay. I know Naruto's secret as well. Hinata looked up with relief in her face. Oh, Tsunade-sama, it was horrible. He was covered in some sort of red chakra-like energy. It made him look like he had 4 tails before a 5th started to appear. I thought it was killing him, there was so much blood. I looked at him with the Byakugan to see what was happening to him, and it seemed that I was pulled inside him. You were inside Naruto? Well, not really, maybe, kind of, oh, I don't really know. I've never heard of anything like that before. I was before a massive sealed gate. I looked through the bars and saw the demon. I realized it was some sort of cage for the 9-tailed fox. I then saw that Naruto was in a cage with the 9-tailed fox. The young woman broke down sobbing. Tsunade gathered her up in a hug. Hinata latched onto the woman with her left hand and arm without letting go of Naruto's hand in her right hand. It's okay, Hinata. Oh, Tsunade, I had followed Naruto a few weeks ago. I saw him pass by Ichiraku Ramen around lunchtime, and he seemed so depressed it was like he didn't even see Ichiraku's. I'd never seen Naruto like that, and I couldn't bring myself to go ask him what was wrong, so I followed him. He went to Lee's dojo to ask Lee to teach him something that Lee didn't want to teach him. They started talking about Sakura and I couldn't help myself. I used the Byakugan to see what they were saying. He told Lee that he loved Sakura like a sister, not like the way he used to. He no longer thought of Sakura as a possible girlfriend. I smiled at that. I was always jealous of Sakura because of Naruto's feelings toward her. Then he said that he didn't think anyone should love him. I couldn't eavesdrop anymore. I couldn't believe that Naruto thought that he didn't deserve anyone's love, so I ran away. I avoided him for days after that. It broke my heart every time I saw him. He was always smiling to everyone despite how much he was hurting inside. I didn't know how I could help him, and I couldn't bear it. Hinata was shaking with her sobbing. Hinata took a deep breath after a few minutes, steadied herself and looked into Tsunade's eyes. Keep talking, Hinata, it'll help. When I saw the 9-tailed fox with Naruto in its grasp, I realized it had been inside Naruto all along. It made sense. It made a lot of things make so much more sense. It was right then that I knew that I really loved Naruto and that my feelings were more than just a crush. I screamed at the fox to let him go. It looked at me and knew I was a Hyuga. Wait, it knew you were a Hyuga. How do you know this? It said so. It looked at me and said Hyuga. Hinata shuddered. So the 9 tails can actually speak to people from within Naruto. Now that's interesting. What else did it say? It said something about first a Uchiha and now a Hyuga. It said that both families could see it there, and that I shouldn't be able to be there. Then it said that what was going on was none of my business. I couldn't let the fox keep Naruto, so I ran through the bars to get to him away from the monster. It knocked me outside of the cage. I wasn't going to give up Naruto, not ever, no matter what. I screamed at the fox to let him go, began my Shugohack Rokuji Yanshu and slowly walked back into the cage. I was able to block its attacks that time, which seemed to amuse the thing somehow. So it hurled Naruto at me, knocking us out of the cage, and it told us to leave. Naruto came out of some sort of daze, saw me there in front of the cage with him, and asked me what I was doing there, and how I got there. Now that is very interesting. So what happened next? Well, we went back to the outside world. I saw the red chakra disappear and Naruto returned to normal. Then I felt the javelin hit me. I looked down to see it sticking out of my chest. She paused, looking down again. That was the first time he called me Hinata-chan. It was almost worth getting a javelin through my lung to hear him say that. I called him Naruto-chan for the first time, told him that I loved him, reached out to touch his cheek and apologized for not telling him sooner. He told me that he loved me too. I was so sad and angry that it had taken us so long, but in a way I was happy that I at least got to tell him that and hear it from him before I died. I'm pretty sure I smiled at him right then. That's the last thing I remember before waking up today at the hospital. I was so sure I was going to die then. Okay, well, you're not dead, even though you both probably should be, so with a bit more luck you two will have plenty of time together now. Tsunade smiled at the once again blushing Hinata. Now let me see that wound. Hinata sat back and lifted her shirt slightly to show Tsunade where the javelin had exited her rib cage. Looks like you're not even going to have a scar here, or maybe just a very faint one. Turn around, let's see your back. Hinata let go of her shirt, stood up and turned around. There's even less to see back here, Tsunade said as she lifted the back of Hinata's shirt and looked at the spot the javelin entered her body. Hold on a second, this might tickle a bit. Tsunade built up her own chakra and used it to probe Hinata's lung along with the tissue and muscle that had been damaged by the javelin. Not much scar tissue at all. In fact, I don't think anyone other than Sakura or myself would be able to detect the scar tissue that is there. You're very lucky, Hinata. How is this possible? The pale-eyed girl asked. I've no idea. Although I'm sure it's all his fault. She laughed and smiled at Hinata as she pointed to Naruto, and was pleased to see the young woman smile. There was a soft knock on the door and Sakura poked her head in. We heard you laugh. Is it okay to come in now? She asked from the door. Yes, and bring those two cowards in with you. She smiled again at Hinata. Imagine, they're so afraid of me that they send in a young woman first. That's hardly fair, you've almost killed me once. So I sometimes tend to be a little cautious around you, especially when we're in a hospital, Jiraiya said as he walked in with a big smile. I'm just following his lead, seemed like a good idea. Kakashi said as he walked in behind Jiraiya. Well, I've got Hinata's story now. Looks like Naruto thought she had died and he somehow managed to draw out the 9 tails full power or near enough not to matter. Now you're certain he had all 9 tails, Jiraiya? Absolutely. The only one to come close to really killing me other than you was Naruto with 4 tails. He also had 4 tails when he hurt Sakura. Up until 3 tails he retained some of himself, but once he hits 4 the fox seems to completely dominate. Well, it seems that Hinata spoke to the fox when he was at 5 tails, and by what she told me, I'd say Naruto definitely wasn't in control then. From what you told me sometime after that he went to 9 tails but was white instead of red and massive amounts of his own chakra were involved. Tsunade said. Spoke to the fox? Kakashi asked. Later, Jiraiya, are you certain he opened the 8 inner gates? Certain? No, but I don't see how any other explanation could fit. I don't think the fox was in control at that point, but I don't think Naruto really was either. The area of destruction was roughly 8 kilometers in diameter, the worst being at about 1 kilometer across. The very center, though, apparently focused on Hinata here, was completely untouched. So seeing Hinata apparently seriously hurt drove him to 5 tails. Unfortunately, we don't know if she may have been safe, or if it was just a fluke that she saw him go from 4 to 5 tails and not get hurt. Since the 4 and 5 tail forms Hinata witnessed were red and bubbling, we can assume that the fox was in control. Thinking she had died not only drove him all the way to 9 tails, but it seems that it somehow suppressed the fox as well. We're assuming that he opened all of the 8 inner gates to do that. Jiraiya, did you teach him any of that? Sorry, no, that one wasn't me. I had considered it, but I thought it'd be too dangerous for him. I thought so. Kakashi, what about you? Nope, we never touched on the gates before, although he witnessed Lee open up the first 5 gates several years ago during Lee's fight with Gaara during the Chunin exams. Kakashi replied to Tsunade. Between what Hinata told me and the reports I've read, I think it's safe to say that Rock Lee is the only one who pointed him to that path. Damn, I was hoping that he at least had some knowledge of the gates prior to seeking out Lee. Since that's a technique that takes years to master, I guess it's safe to say that the mass shadow clone learning technique that Kakashi thought up for him is even more effective than we thought, since he somehow not only picked up how to open the 8 inner gates, but he did so without any of his teachers or teammates knowing about it. I guess we're also going to have to assume that bearing the fox allowed him to survive opening all 8 gates. Tsunade paused and looked at Hinata. We also have the mystery of how he managed to heal Hinata with no medical training. Sakura, did you teach him anything like that? No, Tsunade-sama. I'm certain he learned the basic idea when we rescued Gaara. Sakura spoke up. He gave up some of his chakra to Chiyo-sama, and she used it to revive Gaara. They were in physical contact, so it's almost certain he got some sort of feel for medical jutsu then. He's also been on the receiving end a few times between myself and Ino. I had forgotten about that one with Chiyo. So either he pulled that off on the fly after going through the 9 tails transformation, or that's yet another technique he picked up without anyone knowing. With Naruto, it's probably a bit of both. Tsunade paused. Sakura, you should investigate over at the medical library. See if there is any record of you or I being there when you know we were elsewhere. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that he transformed one of his clones into one of us to gain access to restricted parts of the medical library. Sakura nodded and Jiraiya spoke up. Naruto hasn't really been all that good at learning techniques from reading about them, you know. He can do it, but he's more of a hands-on type of student. Actually, that doesn't rule this out. He could have easily wanted to learn more about what he saw Chiyo-san do and misunderstood what he read. That would fit, especially since I've never seen a link like what we have here between Naruto and Hinata before. Tsunade said as she looked at Naruto. There's a link between me and Naruto-chan? Hinata softly asked. That's what we're going to look into now, dear. Tsunade said. Sakura, when you first found them together after the battle, you discovered that Naruto had somehow linked his chakra to Hinata and accelerated her healing. Yes, when I found them he had his hand on her chest over her heart, and I saw the wound in her chest close up before my eyes once I pulled the javelin out. Hinata's pulse was steady, and she seemed out of danger, so I checked Naruto. When I tried to use my chakra to heal Naruto, it simply flowed through him and was redirected into Hinata. When I pulled his hand away from her heart and tried again, the flow of chakra into Hinata slowed to a trickle for a short time before the link rerouted through his other hand. Before it did that though, I think the chakra that didn't transfer to Hinata seemed to vanish into Naruto. He seemed okay, despite having hardly any detectable chakra, so I thought the best place for them was here at the hospital. So, on the surface it looks like we're dealing with some sort of chakra depletion coma with Naruto. If that was all there was to this case, he should have been up and running a few days ago, going by his history. This time he's already been out for more than a week, about double any other time he's been knocked out due to chakra depletion. Tsunade mused. Still, I know the doctors already tried this to some degree, but I don't think they have the resources we have, right Jiraiya? Of course, when it comes to sheer quantity of high-quality chakra, there's nothing like two of the legendary Sannin. Jiraiya grinned, being pretty sure he knew what Tsunade had in mind. Tsunade placed her hands onto Naruto's chest, and Jiraiya walked over to the other side of the bed and placed his on top of hers. Tsunade began to transfer a large amount of her own chakra into Naruto, and was stunned to feel that most of it seemed to disappear. Jiraiya began to transfer some of his own chakra through Tsunade, and she directed that into Naruto as well. Despite the vast amount of chakra being poured into the boy, nearly all of it simply vanished. A puzzled Tsunade stopped and looked at an apparently dazed Hinata. "Hinata, are you okay?" she asked. Hinata shook her head and answered, "I think so, Tsunade-sama." "That was strange. Can you use your Byakugan this time and see what happens?" "Yes, of course, Tsunade-sama." Hinata activated her family's Aijutsu and was stunned at just how little chakra flowed through Naruto. Tsunade and Jiraiya again began to transfer a large amount of chakra into Naruto. Hinata could see that it flowed throughout Naruto's entire chakra network. Again she was stunned to see that some of the flow was going through Naruto's hand and into hers to boost her own chakra. As the two Sannin stopped, Hinata watched the chakra flowing through Naruto's body drain into the very center of the network near his stomach and fade away. "Tsunade-sama, most of the chakra is flowing into Naruto's chakra center and vanishing. Some of it is flowing through his hand into me." "Well, isn't that interesting?" Tsunade and Jiraiya both murmured together. "Hinata, can you let go of Naruto's hand for a moment?" The briefest flicker of fear crossed Hinata's face. She never wanted to let Naruto go, ever, for the rest of her life. She started to almost chuckle at herself then. The practicality of that was rather funny. After that slight hesitation, she gently took her hand out of Naruto's. There was a slight flicker on several of the monitors attached to the young man, and several readings became a bit more erratic but stayed within acceptable limits. Everyone watched the monitors for a moment, and then relaxed. Tsunade and Jiraiya began to transfer chakra into Naruto again. Again most of it flowed into the center of his chakra network, and vanished. Again there was a very small amount being shunted to Hinata, much smaller than the last time but still there. As she focused she could see that there was a thin thread of chakra connecting her to Naruto that was allowing the flow. "It's the same, Tsunade-sama." Hinata spoke. "Although the amount going to me has greatly diminished. I can see that there is a very small chakra thread connecting me to Naruto now." Tsunade murmured. "Hinata, can you try to send some of your own chakra into Naruto through that thread?" "Of course." Hinata concentrated and through much greater resistance than she would have expected from such a small thread she pushed some of her chakra into Naruto through the thread. The monitors immediately settled into the quieter range they had been in when Hinata was holding Naruto's hand. Hinata was surprised to see that some of the chakra she had forced into Naruto vanished, and she stopped pushing. As soon as she took her will away from the flow, it immediately reversed itself, and she felt it come flowing back into her own system, and the monitors became more active. "Tsunade, I can force it. Some of it disappears into his center, but as soon as I relax, the flow pours back into me." "Well, that's interesting. If I had to guess, I would say that Naruto's subconscious doesn't know that you're out of danger, so it's shunting every bit of chakra it can spare into you." "Well, the chakra that doesn't vanish anyway. I'd cut the thread, but with what the monitors are showing that's probably a bad idea. Let's see how far you can go from him, dear." "Hi, Tsunade-sama," Hinata said as she got up and started to walk across the room towards the door. Each step away made the monitors become more agitated, and they relaxed the closer she got to him until they became nearly completely quiet once she grasped his hand again. "Looks like you're stuck with him, kiddo." Jiraiya laughed as he walked back to the near side of Naruto's bed. "Good luck, you're going to need it." "Well, at least you've got complete range of the room," Sakura said. She had been quiet other than answering Tsunade's questions the whole time. For some reason she felt a small pang of jealousy every time she looked at Hinata holding Naruto's hand. "That's the first time I've ever seen such a link maintain itself when the person who made it was unconscious," Tsunade said. "Well, he does seem to be slowly getting better despite this vanishing chakra problem." "So Tsunade think it's the fox?" Jiraiya asked. "Probably." She looked at Hinata and then at Kakashi. "Hinata, you said the fox told you something along the lines of first a Uchiha and now a Hyuga, right?" "Yes, Tsunade-sama." Would you be willing to try to talk to it again? She hesitated and looked at Naruto. For Naruto, I'll do anything. Jiraiya started to make a crack but got a swift elbow in the gut from Tsunade to cut him off. Kakashi, I'd like you to try to go with her. If it's something the Uchiha and Hyuga clans can do, with a little luck your Sharingan will allow you to accompany her. Of course. The copy ninja finally spoke up. If you do manage to communicate with the damn thing, see if you can find out about the vanishing chakra. The two looked at each other and nodded. Kakashi pulled up his forehead protector to expose his Sharingan eye, and Hinata activated her Byakugan. Kakashi walked over and put his hand on Hinata's shoulder, and they both stared intently at Naruto. Hinata saw the chakra network and focused on the very center where the chakra had disappeared. She looked deeper and deeper, and she felt Kakashi with her. Kakashi couldn't see the way Hinata did, but he felt himself being pulled along with her thanks to the Sharingan. An odd wave of vertigo passed over them, and they found themselves in a strange corridor ankle-deep in blue-tinged water that resembled the huge room that Hinata first found herself in, that contained the gate, holding the nine-tailed fox. They looked at each other, and both felt an aura of malevolence. They wandered the corridors for what seemed to be a few minutes until they found a side branch the feeling of anger was coming from. A short walk later, and they found themselves in the huge room that Hinata had first arrived at during the battle. Hinata approached the gate cautiously but left what she felt was a safe distance between herself and the bars. She glanced at Kakashi, who nodded, and then she looked back into the shadows beyond the bars. Excuse me? She asked softly. There was an odd shuffling sound and something like a snort. A single huge eye slowly opened and glared at her from the shadows on the other side of the bars. Hinata. The slit pupil shifted to look over Kakashi as Hinata's heart skipped a beat that the creature knew her name this time. Another Uchiha. The beast seemed to scowl with that single eye as it stared intently at Kakashi. You are not an Uchiha. Yet you hold the Sharingan. Interesting. It shifted its gaze back to Hinata. So you did survive. I thought that was you the kid was tied to. What do you want this time? She steeled herself, thinking of Naruto, and glared back the fox. Ha 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 ha. You're nearly as bad as Naruto. Why are you taking Naruto's chakra? She demanded. I was. Interesting. Serves him right. He's been taking mine for some time now, and he didn't even ask last time. The thing slowly opened its second eye and focused its entire attention on the young woman. That was your fault, wasn't it? My fault? That one shook her a bit, more so than the vicious glare from the monster's huge red eyes. Yes, it was because of you. I am sure of it. I probably should not have made that crack about his girlfriend. I've never seen the kid so angry before, and I doubt anyone has seen and felt his anger as much as I have. I must be a bad influence. Ha 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 ha. That was the first time he forcibly took chakra from me. Actually, he surprised me when he asked just before you were here last. He wouldn't take my power when the Uchiha was here before. Then you arrived to pull him away from me. I didn't think I'd see him again so soon. To have him rip my own power away from me, I guess he's not as weak as I always tell him he is. Could it really be my fault? She said softly. The thing seemed to smile. You don't get it, do you? You really are as bad as he is. The demon paused. Tell him not to do that again. Its strange unseen smile was gone for that last sentence. Hinata began to realize what the fox was talking about. Naruto did love her. He loved her enough not only to challenge the nine-tailed fox but to dominate it as well. She began to glare at the demon again. It slowly closed its second eye. I am tired, leave me. One more moment please, Kyuubi-sama. Kakashi spoke up. Finally, a little respect. The fox demon's eye closed, and they were startled to see its massive teeth appear as it yawned. The single eye returned to glare at Kakashi. If you could not take as much chakra from Naruto, he could wake up himself. You both would recover quicker if he could eat on his own. Fine, I will try, but I will likely need a bit more first. We'll see what we can do. One last thing, the Uchiha that was here before, who was he? The one Naruto considers his brother, Sasuke. It shifted its glare to Hinata again. Don't forget to tell Naruto not to do that again. Now leave me. The massive eye vanished. Thank you, Kyuubi-sama. Let's go, Hinata. Kakashi said as they turned. There was that odd sense of vertigo, leaving Hinata and Kakashi back in the hospital room with everyone else. Well, are you going to try? Jiraiya asked. Try? We talked to it. We must have been there for at least 10 minutes. Kakashi replied to the toad sage. Well, it wasn't a half second out here. Hinata shuddered. It knows my name now. Don't worry about that. It probably knows all of our names if it cared to think about it. I would imagine it knows much of what Naruto knows. Kakashi reassured her. So did you learn anything? Tsunade demanded. Plenty. The demon actually seemed exhausted. The vanishing chakra is almost certainly flowing to the beast. It seemed to be sleeping when we arrived. There was a layer of water a few inches deep throughout the entire construct. That water seemed to be tinged with Naruto's chakra, and it seemed to be slowly flowing into the demon fox. Did you notice if the water was there last time, Hinata? Actually yes, but it was clear last time. She replied. Well, I guess it's a small relief to know that the damn thing doesn't have an infinite amount of chakra. Tsunade mused. It said it would try to stop taking almost all of the chakra in Naruto, but that it would likely need more first. That might be a problem. It probably needs a good deal more than we have now. Jiraiya and I can probably give up a bit more, but I suspect on the scale of things what we really need another person with chakra comparable to a Hokage. Tsunade mused. The door quietly opened and a soft but gravelly voice spoke out. Would a Kazekage do? Gaara entered the room. I do believe I owe Naruto a favor along these lines. Gaara-sama. Sakura actually jumped up and hugged the young man. Please, Sakura-san. Gaara looked extremely uncomfortable with such a display of affection. I'll gladly help, he said to Tsunade. Well, let's give it a shot then. She nodded to Jiraiya. Tsunade placed her hands on Naruto's chest while the Toad Sage and the Kazekage put their hands on top of hers from the other side of the bed. Tsunade began transferring more and more chakra. After a few minutes the Toad Sage pulled back, obviously strained, causing Tsunade to stop. Whoa, I don't think I should give much more or you'll be putting me up in the hospital as well. Hey, could you guys keep it down? I'm trying to sleep here. Naruto muttered as he slowly opened his eyes. I do believe that makes us even, Naruto. Gaara said with a very rare smile. What? Gaara? Naruto looked around, smiled softly at the sight of Hinata and lightly squeezed her hand. Wow, quite a crowd. It didn't take long for the whole assembly to head out of the hospital. Naruto was a little wobbly, but he insisted that he absolutely needed at least one bowl of ramen if not a dozen. So of course they all headed off to Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto took the center seat with Hinata on his right and Kakashi on her right. Gaara took the seat to his left with Sakura on his left. Ichiraku Ramen was a small shop, but the owner was more than willing to take down the curtain and set up an extra table outside in order to serve the Hokage and Jiraiya. That won't be necessary, Tsuchi-san. Jiraiya and I have work to take care of. I'll make sure to stop by soon though. Please send the bill to my office. Tsunade said. You know you're going to regret that one, right? Jiraiya said as he watched Naruto's face light up at the Hokage's words. No matter. Sakura, when you finish could you stop by Rock Lee's place and send him to my office? Tsunade said. Of course, Tsunade-sama. The pink-haired girl replied. If you don't mind, I would like to accompany you to see Lee Sakura. Gaara asked softly. Not at all. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at Gaara's request. Gaara, thank you again. I believe you know where your guest quarters are, right? I'll have them ready for you. Of course, Tsunade. I believe my quarters are already taken care of. Temari joined me on this trip and was going to take care of that when I went directly to the hospital earlier. Gaara said to Tsunade. Naruto, Hinata and Kakashi, I'd like to see you three as well, say about 2 hours after you finish eating. That should give you two a chance to clean up and change. Kakashi can keep an eye on the two of you for another few hours. Hinata, when you stop by your home and see your father, tell him I'd like to see him as well, at his convenience. Tsunade said as she turned and headed off to the Hokage building. Tsunade and Jiraiya walked off towards the Hokage building. There's something bothering me about that white fox. Tsunade said as she began to glare slightly at Jiraiya. Just one thing? He had caught the slight change in her manner and swallowed hard. You said it formed 11 Raisengans at the same time. Hinata told me that while they were fighting together Naruto formed and released at least a dozen Raisengans. Apparently he can form 2 at a time now and create 1 in a second or less. Well, he can come pretty close to forming 3 at a time. Jiraiya said softly. 3? Tsunade practically hissed. That shouldn't be possible. Well, so far it hasn't been possible for him to build 3 simultaneously, but he can easily create 1 in each hand at the same time. Jiraiya paused. This one was going to hurt. He can easily maintain 3 and was working on 4. Tsunade actually stopped. He can maintain 3 separate Raisengans, damn. Well, that's by himself anyway. By himself? He can pass them off to his clones, and so far by doing that he's been able to maintain 8, and was closing in on the 9th. I suspect that with Kakashi's new learning technique it won't be long before Naruto goes way past 8. Do I even want to know what he's been doing with all these Raisengans? Probably not. Jiraiya winced after saying that once he saw the daggers Tsunade was looking at him. With a deep sigh he continued. He juggles them. Juggles? Like some sort of circus clown? Are you telling me that one of the most powerful techniques developed by the 4th Hokage has been reduced to some sort of sideshow toy for Naruto? Tsunade was beginning to get red as her anger built. Well, I wouldn't say that. Jiraiya mused. He was working something out in his head, I think. He wouldn't tell me what it was for though, but I suspect it was to counter something he had run into somewhere along the line. I believe he once said something along the lines that his goal was to be able to maintain 9. Besides, it's probably my fault that Naruto doesn't hold the Rasengan in such high regard. Since I've taught it to him, I've encouraged him to use it for just about anything he can think of. Although the Rasengan requires a high degree of raw chakra control, Naruto was always a little lacking in fine chakra control. So I figured the more he used the Rasengan for anything he could think of, the better off he would be. Great, that was probably the basis of that Rasengan ring the Naruto fox made. Kakashi and Yamato taught him chakra wind nature manipulation to add the element of wind to that thing, and somehow in a way that nobody understands he tossed in the element of water. I guess he could have somehow drawn on the 9-tailed fox for that, although I always thought the fox had more of an affinity to fire. I hope to God he didn't pick that up from that one time Yamato combined a water attack with Naruto's Futon Rasengan when they recently fought that Kakuzu freak. Tsunade fumed. Basically, under the right circumstances, Naruto could destroy nearly all of Konoha with that. That's one way of looking at it. Jiraiya answered. Tsunade scowled at him. You have another? Remember, the very center of that area was untouched. Konoha is basically a segment of a circle. If he could control that, the entire village of Konoha would have an ultimate defense that the world has never seen before. Jiraiya, there are times I really hate you. Tsunade fumed even more. Gaara, thank you for helping me out back there. Naruto said. I couldn't very well stay in your debt when I had the opportunity to even the score, now could I? I guess so. Naruto said with a pout. I would have liked keeping a favor or two from you before I become Hokage. Well, we will just have to work together more often. If we continue along these lines, we won't be able to keep score. That's probably the best solution. Naruto replied with his characteristic grin, and what many would consider uncharacteristic wisdom. Yes. So not that I'm complaining, but why did you come to Konoha? Naruto asked. Your recent incident was a little on the apocalyptic side. Tsunade and I have been communicating about the best ways to handle certain aspects of this with a minimal amount of conflict. The real opponent here is the Akatsuki, not the villages where the ninja who attacked you came from. The timing of my appearance was simply fortuitous. Yeah, fortuitous? I'll just stick with thank you. It is good to see you, and now you finally get to eat some of the best ramen in the world. Naruto grinned widely again before turning back to his current bowl. Gaara and Sakura finished a bowl apiece, said their goodbyes and headed off to Lee's apartment. A surprisingly short time later, even for those who knew him, Naruto had finished 8 bowls. He occasionally put down his chopsticks to reach over and caress Hinata's hand while she waited after only finishing a single bowl. Kakashi found the whole interaction between the two interesting. He was a bit surprised to see such tenderness in Naruto, and also to see it returned by Hinata. Actually, he was very surprised by the very existence of this new romance, but he figured it best to keep quiet. As they got up and were leaving, they ran into Shikamaru and Shino. Naruto! Shikamaru called out, and stumbled as he saw that Naruto and Hinata were holding hands. Hinata? Shikamaru! Shino! It's good to see you guys. Naruto exclaimed as he waved with his free hand. Shikamaru, Shino-kun. Hinata said with a slight bow and faint blush. What's going on? Shikamaru demanded. You two were in the hospital for like a week, and you were not only in the same room, but they weren't allowing any of us to visit. Other than Sakura, that is, and she wouldn't tell us anything. We're pretty sure that we just saw her near Lee's place a few minutes ago, and it looked like she was with the Kazekage. The hospital was most concerning. Shino softly joined the conversation. These two are fine guys. Kakashi joined in as well. Officially, Gaara is here for personal reasons, not as the Kazekage. We really have to get going. I'm sure you can all catch up later. Naruto, Hinata, come along. You really don't want to keep the Hokage waiting now, do you? Naruto looked up to his sensei and scowled. He couldn't prove it, but he just knew that Kakashi had a slight grin on under that mask. Sorry guys, Kakashi-sensei is right, we've got to run. We'll catch up with you as soon as we can. Naruto said. With that, Naruto, Hinata and Kakashi headed off. That was interesting. Shino said in his quiet manner. Interesting? I'd say that's an understatement. When did Naruto and Hinata become a couple? Something really weird is going on. Shikamaru muttered. Kakashi led them off to the Hyuga residence. He figured it'd be best to get the hard part over with as soon as possible. He quietly observed the two as they walked down the street holding hands. As they got closer and closer to the Hyuga manor, he took note that Hinata was becoming obviously more and more tense. There seemed to be a slight delay for each degree of apprehension Hinata achieved before Naruto also became slightly more tense himself. Kakashi wondered if Naruto was being affected by Hinata's agitation, or if he was simply nervous on his own. Hinata seemed hesitant at the front door herself, but in the end steadied herself and pulled the bell cord. One of the servants almost immediately opened the door for them, and seemed a bit taken aback by the three of them. Shizu, could you please direct us to my father, please? Hinata asked the servant. Of course, he is in the training area. Thank you. Kakashi-sensei, this way please. She kept her grip on Naruto's hand, giving him no option other than to follow. It didn't take long to wind their way through the manor, and find her father practicing with her cousin Niji. Excuse me, father. Hinata spoke, causing the two to stop. Hinata, it is good to see you out of the hospital. Hayashi scowled slightly at the sight of his daughter holding hands with Naruto, but to both Hinata's and Naruto's relief he declined to comment on it. Kakashi, it is good to see you as well. What brings the three of you here? Godame Hokage would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Kakashi spoke up to spare Hinata. I'm something of a messenger and chaperone. She decided that these two shouldn't be separated without further investigation and wishes to discuss that with you. I believe that she also wants to further interview the two of them shortly, but wanted to let them eat, get cleaned up and changed first. I see. I guess that's where the chaperone part comes in, pretty much. It seems that the maximum distance these two can separate comfortably is about 20 feet. That seemed to be a bit problematic in regards to the whole cleaning up and getting changed issues. Seeing that we've already eaten and that Naruto's apartment is a bit closer to the Hokage's office, I figured we'd stop by here first. Well, I'm not one to go against the Hokage's wishes. Considering that you said that she wished to see them shortly, we can continue this discussion in Hinata's suite. I believe her private bath will allow us all to maintain a measure of decency, and still allow the two of them to stay within that 20 feet. Hayashi replied, while hardly happy about the idea of his 15-year-old daughter being almost literally tied to any 15-year-old boy, let alone one as unpredictable as Naruto. Hayashi was a bit more curious than upset at the moment. He had visited the hospital several times during the week and had gotten somewhat used to the sight of his daughter holding hands with Naruto. 3 years earlier he would have been extremely upset over the very idea of his daughter even associating with Naruto, but after watching Naruto defeat Neji he had an odd if grudging respect for the young man. He also enjoyed the obvious nervousness of the two of them. It wasn't long before all four were in Hinata's suite. It was actually rather small considering the Hyuga family wealth. A single bed, a couple of dressers, a desk and 2 chairs took up most of the space. There was a window above the bed and 2 doors. One led to her private bath, and the other to a walk-in closet. Hayashi and Kakashi were both mildly amused at the sight of the rising discomfort of the 2 teenagers, as they disengaged their hands and as they both became, obviously, embarrassed as Hinata gathered up some fresh clothing and disappeared into her private bath. The 2 adults watched in continuing amusement as Naruto became obviously more agitated as Hinata disappeared and got further away from him. Naruto paced around a bit for a minute or so, unable to keep still as the 2 older men watched him with mild amusement. So Naruto. Hayashi bore down on the young man with a withering stare. Just what are your intentions with my daughter? Naruto felt as though he was about to fall over dead. He thought for sure that his heart had just stopped and was seriously thinking about jumping out the window. Naruto! Hinata exclaimed as she burst through the door wrapped in a towel. This proved to be too much for the young man, and for a change he was the one to faint due to the combination of the barely covered Hinata and her father's gaze. Well now, I certainly didn't expect that. Kakashi muttered. Hinata, get back in there, he's fine, just a little stressed. Hayashi exclaimed. The young woman suddenly realized what stressed must have meant, and she glared at her father before turning, stomping into the bath and slamming the door shut. Well, that's something I certainly didn't expect either. Hayashi said as he stared at the door Hinata just slammed shut. I never would have thought my daughter would be willing to stand up to me while wrapped in a towel. Apparently she is able to sense something from Naruto through the link. I wonder if he can do the same. I think it's safe to say that not much if anything will scare Hinata now, especially if she thinks something is threatening Naruto. I thought for sure I was going to need this for Hinata. Kakashi said as he reached into his belt kit. Pulling out a smaller kit, he opened it up to pull out a very small vial. Opening the vial he waved it under Naruto's nose. The small amount of smelling salts inside were enough to snap Naruto awake. What? The young ninja started to say as he looked around and realized where, and with who he was with. I apologize, Naruto. That was a little unfair of me. Although it is nice to see that you haven't been completely contaminated by Jiraiya's reputation. Hayashi said with a smirk. That's okay. The young man still looked flushed and very uncomfortable. Naruto slowly got up and began to slowly walk around again. He stopped before one of Hinata's dressers that had several pictures on it. There was one much like the single picture he had in his apartment. It was Kurenai-sensei with Hinata, Shino and Kiba when they first formed Team 8. Naruto looked over the rest of the pictures carefully. Wow, Hinata's sister has gotten big. Naruto exclaimed, fixating on a picture of a single Hyuga woman. That's Hinata's mother Naruto, not her sister Hanabi. She passed away shortly after Hanabi was born. Hayashi said quietly. Oh. I'm sorry, she really looks like Hinata's sister. Naruto glanced to the floor to hide his embarrassment. The 3 spent the next several minutes in an awkward silence before Hinata came out wearing a new pair of her typical black pants and a short white t-shirt. Her hair was still damp and she was continuing to towel dry it as she walked into her closet. Naruto-kun, could you get one of my holsters in the top drawer of the larger dresser please? She asked from the closet. Sure. Naruto was the closest to it after all. Opening the drawer he was impressed with how neatly Hinata kept her basic gear. He noticed it was full of mostly kunai and shuriken, but she had a few holsters as well. Pulling out the first holster he noticed it was empty by its weight. How many kunai do you want? 4 should do. Naruto filled one of the holster's pockets with the 4 knives. What about shuriken? There should be about a dozen or so ready for the holster. Naruto glanced around and sure enough there was a spring-loaded thin wooden dowel that held a dozen shuriken held by a small latch that fit nicely in the holster's second pocket. Here you go. He said as he went to hand the holster to her as she entered the room pulling one of her gray and lavender jackets. 1 second. She reached around him and pulled a wrap off the top of the dresser. After quickly wrapping her right leg she took the holster from Naruto and strapped it on. Didn't you two just get out of the hospital? I can't imagine you two being assigned to a mission. Hayashi said. Doesn't hurt to be ready? Right, Naruto? Hinata said as she pulled out her belt pouch and clipped it on the back of her belt. Nope. He said with that ear-to-ear grin of his. Hayashi looked over the blonde boy wearing gray shorts and a dark t-shirt. You seem a little lacking, Naruto. Hayashi remarked. Yeah, well, I did just get out of the hospital and they always try to take most of my stuff. I've only got a couple of kunai, 4 shuriken and 2 exploding tags. They let you keep that stuff in the hospital? They wouldn't if they knew about all of it. They get especially upset when they find my tags after their first check, but they usually don't care about my 2 spare kunai, and I don't think they've ever found my 4 extra shuriken. I've gotten pretty good at hiding stuff from them. I'll reload properly once we stop by my place. We should get going, we don't want to keep the Hokage waiting, and we still have to stop by Naruto's apartment. Hinata spoke up. She couldn't quite explain it, but she felt that her father was a little too accepting of Naruto. This was nothing like she feared the meeting between the two of them would be like, and she found it more than a bit unnerving. I should take care of a few things, but I'll most likely see the 3 of you at the Hokage's office. Hayashi said as he left Hinata's room. It didn't take long for the 3 of them to head out of the Hyuga Manor, thread through the village to find themselves at Naruto's apartment. Sorry it isn't cleaner. At least I took out the garbage before the mission. I forgot that once and boy did I regret it. I really haven't had a chance to properly clean the place since I got back. Naruto said, slightly embarrassed as he opened the door and led them inside. Naruto's apartment was just a bit smaller than Hinata's suite. Only instead of a huge walk-in closet, Naruto had a small kitchenette. He didn't know it, but his bathroom was much smaller, but the bedroom itself was a similar size to Hinata's. He had less furniture, so it seemed larger though. With a single chair in the kitchenette, Naruto left them in the bedroom, which pretty much doubled up as his living room. There Kakashi and Hinata could at least sit on the bed. Naruto made a quick stop in the kitchen and set some water to boil in the electric teapot. He returned to the bedroom, quickly gathered some clean clothes and headed to the bathroom. I'll be right out, he said with a flash of a smile. Kakashi muttered as he looked around. He'd seen Naruto's place in worse condition. The only real problem was a 2.5-year-old layer of dust in some spots. His attention though was on the pile of scrolls on the floor. Naruto always seemed to have several scrolls scattered about, but this pile was a bit larger than what Naruto usually had. Kakashi decided to rummage through them. The scrolls were actually quite an odd combination. Many of them were really suitable to academy students. Kakashi quickly realized that as dense as he was, Naruto actually knew all of the techniques and lessons from these scrolls. Looks like Naruto was being pretty sneaky here. Kakashi muttered. Why do you say that? Hinata asked. Looks like Naruto was hiding something here. Kakashi replied as he continued to dig in the pile and pulled out a scroll. Ah, here we go. What's that? It looks like Tsunade's hunch was correct. It's a high-level lesson on medical jutsu. Kakashi continued to root through the pile and pulled out 3 more scrolls. So Naruto really was trying to teach himself medical jutsu. Looks that way. Hinata looked around, glancing at the single picture of Team 7. It wasn't long before Naruto came out drying his hair with a towel, dressed in black pants for a change and a black t-shirt. He froze when he saw Kakashi holding the 4 scrolls. So doing a little extracurricular studying? Kakashi asked. Well, I guess so. Naruto looked down but was saved from further questioning by the teapot as it began to whistle. Gotta run. He flashed his smile and disappeared into the kitchen. Kakashi and Hinata looked at each other, and both followed him into the other room. Naruto was peeling open an instant ramen cup and began to pour the boiling water into it as they entered. I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei, I had to, you know what I mean? Naruto said. Naruto, teams are assigned medical ninja so the other ninja can focus on their fighting skills. You could overload yourself if you continue what you've been doing. Just how much sleep have you been missing anyway? Well, I hadn't been sleeping too well lately anyway, so I figured I might as well do something useful with the time. Hinata walked up and took his hand in hers. It's okay, Naruto. If you hadn't, I wouldn't be here right now. Naruto looked into her eyes and turned to Kakashi. I'll deal with any consequences if this is the result. That's going to be up to Tsunade-sama, but I don't think you have much to worry about since it likely saved Hinata. Although next time you have trouble sleeping, you might want to finish cleaning. Kakashi said with a chuckle. Well, she can't be any worse than the damn fox. Naruto looked determined but swallowed hard. He shook off the feeling of unease at the thought of facing Tsunade about this, and softly pulled his hand away from Hinata. He picked up the instant ramen and finished it off in a few seconds. That should hold me off for a short time, Naruto said as he reached out and took Hinata's hand again. They returned to his bedroom/living room where he packed a holster with a half-dozen kunai and a dozen shuriken. He pulled out a belt pouch, making sure it had another half-dozen kunai and another dozen shuriken along with a dozen exploding tags. He added one of his new weapon scrolls and hooked it on his belt on his back left. He grabbed his black and orange jacket, pulled out Gamachan and smiled knowing that he had enough cash for several more stops at Ichiraku without pulling any cash from the bank. Think you've got enough there? Kakashi said with a smile. I hope so. If she's really angry, I might need a lot more tags. With that, all 3 laughed and headed out to the Hokage Tower. Naruto and Hinata hand in hand along with Kakashi, who had the pilfered medical scrolls. Naruto, Hinata and Kakashi entered the Hokage's office. Naruto and Hinata were still holding hands. They looked around, seeing that in addition to everyone who had been at the hospital earlier, Shizen was next to Tsunade holding Tuntun. Rock Lee was there with Gai-sensei. Hayashi was there with an elder Hyuga. Temari was there standing near Gaara, who was having a quiet conversation with Rock Lee. Shikamaru was also there sitting with Kurenai-sensei, who was sitting about as far as she could from the Hyugas. Even Iruka-sensei was there, although he seemed quite subdued by the sheer number of people and who some of the people were in the room. Gee, I thought we had a crowd back at the hospital, Naruto said as he entered. Naruto, Hinata, we've got something of a problem here. Tsunade said. I don't know about you, but everything seems fine to me. Typically, Naruto flashed his overpowering smile, much to Tsunade's irritation, as he and Hinata took a couple of spare seats. Fine? I don't think so. At the very least, this whole incident signifies a dramatic change in the tactics used by the Akatsuki. Although I think it's safe to say that the Cloud and Grass villages won't be mounting any offensive operations anytime soon. It's likely that none of the other villages are going to be willing to risk losing any of their own ninja, considering that it looks like several hundred Cloud, Grass and Sound ninja were completely wiped out. Look, we all know that the Akatsuki are after Naruto. I think we really lucked out this time and have probably taken away one of their options. Jiraiya jumped in. Looks like your hunch was right, Kakashi said to Tsunade as he walked over to her desk and put the 4 scrolls he found at Naruto's apartment on it. Tsunade glanced at Naruto, narrowing her eyes coldly, causing the blonde ninja to swallow hard with a feeling of dread. Excuse me, Godame. I believe that although this whole Akatsuki problem is very important at this time, we are a bit more concerned about this link between Uzumaki and Hinata. The elder Hyuga spoke up, looking at Hinata with disdain. Hinata looked down while Naruto narrowed his eyes and glared at the elder Hyuga, much like the way Tsunade just did to him. Unnoticed by both Naruto and Hinata, Tsunade's expression shifted from amused irritation towards Naruto to a smoldering look of anger, as her gaze bore down on the elder Hyuga. Kurenai-sensei also held a similar gaze towards the older man with white eyes. I don't think I care for the way you're acting towards Hinata, Naruto said softly and slowly as an edge of anger crept into his voice. The elder looked down his nose at Naruto. I don't think I care one way or the other what you think. Although Hinata is considered superfluous to the clan, she still bears the Hyuga name, and as a Hyuga she should not be associating with the likes of something like you. You know, I've been hearing crap like that about myself all of my life and couldn't care less when some idiot starts spouting off that garbage, but insult Hinata like that and you're going to seriously piss me off, Naruto exclaimed. You dare call me an idiot? I'll do a lot more if you keep talking about Hinata like she's worthless. Alright, knock it off already, both of you, Tsunade yelled as she slammed her hand on her desk. Knock it off? I don't think so. Naruto stood up as his voice got louder. This whole prestigious clan bull is so messed up. These morons keep screwing over their own family with that stupid seal and a bunch of inane rules about branch family and main family. They have no regard for their family's strongest member. Between these yahoos basically torturing their own family and Itachi, I think it's very obvious that there's a lot of things wrong with some of the prestigious clans here in Konoha. Naruto was obviously furious as he vented. I said knock it off, Naruto, Tsunade said softly. And you, Mr. High Mucky Muck, elder of the Hyuga clan, if you ever so much as hint that Naruto is something ever again in my presence, I will personally pop your head like the infected pimple you are trying so hard to become. In case I haven't made myself clear on this matter, you would do well to consider Naruto my younger brother. If that isn't clear enough for everybody in this village, I will adopt him as my son, and put this crap to rest once and for all. The entire room became deathly silent. Even Naruto was stunned into an open-mouthed, shocked silence. After a few moments, Hinata squeezed his hand, having never let it go through his rant, and tugged his arm slightly. For a growingly common change, he actually got the hint, and sat down quietly next to her. If I may. Hayashi spoke up and looked to Tsunade, who nodded. Although I believe it could have been handled better, Naruto does bring up some valid points. Hayashi, the Hyuga elder exclaimed. You may be the head of the clan, but that does not mean you can do or say whatever you want, especially outside of the clan. Honorable elder. Hayashi bowed to the older Hyuga. I will not lose any more of my family because of our internal issues. Niji was returned to me because of Naruto. I may not agree with him about Hinata's strength, but over the past 3 years I have come to believe that she is hardly superfluous to the clan. You're wrong about Hinata. Naruto stood again. If I had to fight a Hyuga, Hinata is the only one I think is even worth worrying about in the whole Hyuga clan. If you people are basing that moronic opinion that she's weak because she can't beat her little sister, I'll kick all of your asses with ease. You're all obviously too stupid to realize that the only reason why Hinata can't fight Hanabi is that Hanabi looks like their mother. Geez, and people think I'm an idiot. I've already beaten Niji, and he's the one everyone assumes is the best in the clan. I'm pretty sure that I can avoid, if not outright beat, the 64 and 128 palms techniques now, and I've figured out 2, maybe 3 ways depending on how you count them to beat Hakushukaten. I haven't been able to figure out a decent way past Hinata's Shugohack, especially since she's usually a bit faster than I am. About the only way I think I might be able to beat it would be to overload her with a few thousand clones, and good luck to any of you who think you can generate more clones than I can. After that fight last week out in Wind Country, if you put me and Hinata together and give us a week to practice, none of the rest of the Hyuga clan could touch us, even if all you work together. I'd be willing to bet that the 2 of us could give even Tsunade and Jiraiya a run for their money, right Hinata? Hinata was stunned by Naruto's words and could only nod yes numbly, as she smiled softly. So this is what Niji was talking about. Hayashi thought to himself as he stared intently at the young man standing before him. Even without using the Byakugan, it is obvious that he has absolute faith in himself. Further, he has absolute faith in Hinata as well. Not a single doubt. Interesting, very interesting. He can barely stand, but he's willing to challenge the entire Hyuga clan for Hinata. Naruto suddenly became obviously unsteady as a wave of dizziness passed through him, causing him to sit back down rather abruptly. You're not doing anything in a week, and until you are fully recovered to my satisfaction you can forget about any training. Argue with me and I'll put you back in the hospital myself. Tsunade said as he settled into his seat. Yes, Tsunade-sama. Naruto said in an uncharacteristic meek manner. Hinata reached into her belt kit and pulled out a ration bar and without a word handed it to him. Go Dame Hokage. If Naruto does indeed have a method to counter any of the Hyuga techniques, maybe we should have some sort of official assessment of his ideas. I think it would be in the best interests of the village as a whole. I believe he said he needed a week working with Hinata. Why don't we run a series of matches to pit some of the Hyuga clan against the two of them a week after you clear him for training? Hayashi asked as he eyed the silent interplay of his daughter and Naruto as the young man nodded to her and started eating the ration bar. You know, I think that is a very good idea, Hayashi-san. Tsunade said with a smile. The Hyuga elder was also smiling, and with a glance between him and Hayashi he nodded. I don't think we need the entire clan for this, considering it would be nothing more than a few assessment matches. Hayashi said. Okay, then 1 week after I clear Naruto for training we'll stage the assessment matches in the stadium. In the meantime I'll keep the two of them in one of the guest suites. I don't think it would be proper for Hinata to stay with Naruto at his place or for him to stay with her at the Hyuga Manor. I also want to keep them together until I can fully understand this link between the two of them. I find that acceptable. Thank you for addressing this issue. I leave the details to you and I will have Hanabi drop off some of Hinata's stuff tomorrow morning. It is starting to get a little on the late side. If you don't mind we will be off now. Hayashi said with a bow. Of course. I will notify you when we have a date for these matches, Hayashi-san. Tsunade said, bowing her head slightly before Hayashi and the Hyuga elder got up and left her office. Okay, let's see, next on the list. Tsunade's gaze traveled across the room to settle on Rock Lee and Gai-sensei, much to their obvious discomfort. Tsunade-sama, you can't be upset with Lee or Gai-sensei for what I've done. Naruto exclaimed as he noticed who Tsunade's withering gaze had settled on. Naruto, you can keep quiet and just listen. Keep in mind that your actions can often have consequences on others. Her gaze returned to Lee and Guy. To be honest, I'm not sure what, if anything, I should do to the two of you. I am still unhappy with Guy for teaching Lee about the 8 inner gates whenever I think about it. Now it seems that Lee here has taken it upon himself to teach Naruto about them. There were a couple of gasps around the room while Naruto hung his head in embarrassment. Before we continue though, Naruto, I believe there are still a few people here who do not know the story of your seal. Tsunade's look softened as she looked at Naruto. It's okay, the only ones here that don't know about the Kyuubi and me is Lee and Shikamaru. I told Sakura and Temari when we were on our way to Suna to help Gaara, and Gaara has probably known for years. Hinata found out during the last mission. I'm pretty sure most everyone else here knew about the fox years earlier. Wait, you and the Kyuubi? Lee asked, looking completely confused. I was born on the day the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Naruto said quietly. The 4th Hokage couldn't kill it, but he was able to seal it inside of me. The room was again silent for a moment. Hinata squeezed Naruto's hand reassuringly again before Tsunade continued. Okay, as Naruto said, most everyone here knew about the Kyuubi being sealed within Naruto. I'm sure Shikamaru had his own suspicions about Naruto, and Lee probably did as well. If you want to know more, you guys will have asked him later. Now we've been assuming that it was opening all 8 gates that allowed you to pull a 9-tailed form and suppress the Kyuubi. Is that right? Yes. Naruto looked down again while Hinata tightened her grip on his hand. Go on, Naruto. Tsunade prodded him. I was so angry, he said quietly. Hinata had just pulled me away from the fox. I never thought that anyone would ever care for me enough to face off against the fox like that. When I saw the javelin go through her, I felt completely helpless, and I didn't care about myself anymore. It was so strange. I've never been so furious yet. I was completely calm. That's never happened before. Things got a little fuzzy after I released Shimon, the 8th gate, but I'm pretty sure that I faced the damn fox and pulled its chakra away from it. Usually I would ask it to give me its chakra. I don't really remember anything after that. Oh. Naruto, the fox wanted me to tell you to never do that again. Hinata interrupted. You released Shimon. Guy and Lee yelled out in stereo. You should be dead, Naruto. Lee continued. The only reason why I'm not was probably because of the fox inside of me. Well, let's not go over every little detail. Guy, Lee, I want you to promise me that you will not teach anyone else how to open any of the 8 inner gates. If you ever get tempted to do so again, talk to me first. I know Naruto can be extremely persuasive in his own way, so I won't be assigning any sort of punishment to either of you, and if I find out that either of you are punishing yourselves, I'll ban you from any training at all for at least a week. Tsunade said with a small grin as Guy and Lee's faces fell. Tsunade, just to be sure, I'll drag Naruto over to see Gai-sensei and Lee one day once he's recovered a bit more, and we'll all go over what Naruto knows about the gates just in case he missed anything from Lee. Naruto has been pushing things a bit lately, and even though he managed to open all 8 gates, there is a good chance that there are things he's not fully aware of. Kakashi said. Okay, we'll go with that. Guy, Lee, you can go. Thank you, Godame-sama. The 2 green-clad ninja cried out while they nearly tripped over each other in their rush to get out of Tsunade's office. Although Lee did manage to flash a smile to Naruto coupled with an expression that Naruto just knew meant that Lee was going to really grill him about his opening all 8 gates. Is it me or are they talking in stereo more? Naruto asked to nobody in particular. Tsunade's gaze settled on the 4 scrolls Kakashi had left on her desk earlier. About these. Tsunade's cold, calculating stare was back and focused on Naruto. One of the big reasons this kind of stuff is restricted is because plenty of novices had managed to nearly get themselves killed trying to learn how to do medical jutsu without proper supervision. I don't think we ever actually lost anyone, but there were a few that ruined themselves and had to give up being shinobi. In your particular case you've got so much chakra I'd worry more about anyone you actually tried to treat with whatever bizarre medical jutsu you've come up with. I can't imagine what could happen to someone who was injured if you pumped too much chakra into them, especially during the heat of a combat situation. We seem to have gotten incredibly lucky with Hinata here, and other than the odd link between the two of you there doesn't seem to have been any harm done. In fact, I suspect that link may be the real reason why the two of you are still alive. For that reason I'm not going to give you a hard time about any of this, but I don't want you doing any more secret training in medical jutsu. In fact, I don't think I want you doing any more secret training in anything. From now on I want you to either get advance approval from Iruka, Kakashi, Jiraiya or myself before you attempt anything new to you. Do you understand? Yes, Tsunade-sama. Naruto answered quietly. We're reasonably certain you transformed one of your clones into either myself or Sakura to get these. Tsunade said as she tapped the medical lesson scrolls. I hate to admit it, but that was a pretty good job of intelligence gathering, but this is another thing I don't want to find out that you've been doing anymore, at least with any of us. Naruto smiled slightly at the small compliment. At this point he was actually pretty ecstatic. He still hadn't acquired a new set of bruises or ringing eardrums from Tsunade's anger at his actions. He was definitely ahead of the game. He glanced at Hinata's fingers intertwined with his own and his smile increased just a bit more. Shizen, Sakura, could you make sure that these are returned to their proper place? As Hayashi said, it's starting to get late. You two can call it a night. We're just about done here. Hi, Tsunade-sama. Shizen said as she picked up the scrolls. Sakura glanced around a bit, and with a barely audible sigh followed Shizen out. Kurenai-sensei, since you are on an active duty, would you mind taking a mission to be their chaperone in the suite as well? Tsunade asked. Not at all, go dame, it'll be my pleasure. I will have to swing by my home to get some stuff first though. Kurenai answered. That won't be a problem. Take Shikamaru with you to carry everything. It'll do his lazy ass some good to do some honest work. Temari snickered at that line and Shikamaru decided it wasn't worth even commenting on. He simply sighed in resignation. Tsunade, Temari and I should get an early start home tomorrow. I don't think there's much else we would need it for here. Please keep us of any new developments. Thank you for allowing us to be here for this. It was quite interesting. It's nice to see that other villages have similar family issues as we do in Suna, Gaara said before getting up and turning to Naruto. Naruto, please take care. I'm happy that you managed to surprise them once again, but I doubt the Akatsuki will give up on capturing you and Kyuubi. I don't think it would be good for the whole world if they succeed in capturing all of the tailed beasts. I don't have many people I consider real friends, and in many ways you were my first friend, so again please be careful. Gaara, I haven't said this in a while, but believe it. They're not taking me down, and they're going to regret even trying. Naruto stood up and grasped Gaara's hand in a firm handshake. Tsunade, we'll continue keeping our advanced strike teams at the ready. As long as the Akatsuki continue to be a threat, we will share any intelligence. With a bit of luck, maybe sooner we'll be able to take out a few of these Akatsuki ourselves. Right now Sand only has the one shared kill of Sasori, while Leaf not only shares Sasori but has Kakuzu and possibly Haiden as well. Hey, what about that Deidara freak? Naruto jumped in. Sorry Naruto, we have some intelligence that Deidara faked his death. Tsunade said. Damn. I'm sorry Gaara, I really wish we had gotten that one for you. Don't worry about it. That just means that I still have a chance to return the favor of my death to that one myself. Gaara's normally reserved expression briefly flared with an expression of incredibly cold malice. Gaara, Tsunade and I talked about this earlier, and I'm going to see about splitting my intelligence network's communication lines so that much of the raw information goes to Suna as well as Konoha. Hopefully that will increase the odds of catching some more of the Akatsuki with their pants down. Jiraiya joined in. Thank you Jiraiya, it will be much appreciated. Gaara answered. Tsunade looked at Naruto and sighed. I had hoped to hold on to this a little longer, but this is as good a time as we're likely to get. It's pretty common knowledge that, as near as we can tell, Sasuke killed Orochimaru a few weeks ago. We've been getting some reports of rumors that he is going to bring peace to the world or some such nonsense. He seems to be building his own organization, and we're assuming that he's going to be going after Itachi. With a little luck he might take out a few Akatsuki himself. That might also explain their change in tactics to get Naruto. It looks like they're feeling pressured themselves. That should make taking out some of them ourselves a little easier. I think we should leave on that note. We will keep in touch. Thank you again. Gaara said. Hey slacker. Temari finally spoke up and smiled. Good work with Haiden. Sometimes I think there's hope for you yet. Naruto, Sakura, it was good to see you again. Hopefully we'll finish this business soon, and we'll be able to spend some time during one of our visits. Hold up a second Temari, Gaara. Kurenai and I will accompany you to the guest facility. It's on the way to Kurenai's home. Shikamaru said as he got up and nodded to Tsunade. Wait a second, Kurenai. Tsunade said as she rummaged around in her desk. Here's a key to the third suite in the guest facility. Hinata, Naruto, I'm sure Shikamaru will have me back shortly, so I'll see you both in a little while at the suite. Kurenai said. With that, Gaara and Temari joined Shikamaru and Kurenai as they all left Tsunade's office. Tsunade reached back into her desk and pulled out 2 more keys. She walked around her desk and handed Hinata and Naruto one apiece. These are also for the third suite. Although I doubt you two will need both keys, just in case the link fades and you can separate, you might need both of them. I'm pretty sure that Jiraiya and Kakashi have a few things to take care of, so I'd like you to escort them to the suite. Of course, Tsunade-sama. Iruka said as he got up and bowed deeply to Tsunade. Jiraiya and Kakashi both said goodnight to everyone and vanished. Now Iruka, I'm sure you've got to get up early tomorrow, so I think it'll be okay for you to leave these two alone for a little while before Kurenai gets there. I believe the two of you can be trusted. Right. Tsunade said as her eyes bored into Naruto. What? Naruto practically jumped up as Tsunade's gaze settled on him. Tsunade sighed deeply. I guess I have to spell it out for you, since it looks like somehow beyond any reasonable expectations you've managed not to be completely corrupted by that damn pervert during your training. Basically, I think that the two of you could use a little bit of time alone together, but I don't want either of you to think about taking advantage of my hospitality. In other words, when you're alone together you had better keep your clothes on. Naruto and Hinata both blushed brightly at Tsunade's words. Well, Hinata help me out here. Naruto looked to her desperately, but she just turned bright red and stared at the floor. Naruto, the words you want are thank you. Tsunade said as she smiled. Just don't forget what she said, Naruto. Iruka said as he elbowed his former student. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Naruto quietly said. Yes, thank you, Tsunade-sama, we do appreciate this. Hinata joined in. One last thing, Naruto, just when did you learn the word inane anyway? Everyone laughed as Iruka led the two teenagers out as they all said goodnight to Tsunade. Left alone finally, she reached into her desk and pulled out a bottle of sake. Iruka led his 2 young charges through the quiet streets. It had gotten rather late, and they didn't talk as they wound their way through the streets to the Hokage's guest facility. It was an unassuming building looking much like one of the typical manor houses that many of the better-off families of Konoha lived in. Their keys also worked in the front gate, and they wound their way through the main hall until they found a door with a number 3 on it. Okay, you two, don't forget what Tsunade said, but otherwise have a good night. Iruka said with a smile as he turned and left the two in the doorway. In something of a haze they walked into the suite and nearly collapsed onto the couch. It had been a long day. Finally alone, Tsunade sighed and poured herself some sake. There was a soft knock on her door. Damn, will this day ever end? She thought. Yes, come in. She sighed again. Tsunade-sama? A young pink-haired girl timidly entered. Sakura? Tsunade was surprised at the unsure and uncomfortable state Sakura seemed to be in. What's wrong? It's Naruto. The young woman timidly looked down. Well, more like my feelings for him and this whole Hinata thing. Oh dear. Tsunade said softly. I'm going to need more to drink. She thought as she polished off the first cup of sake and poured a second. I'm not sure about anything anymore. Sakura, I thought you looked at Naruto like a brother? This new relationship with Hinata shouldn't bother you. I know, and I feel horrible about that too. It's just that every time I look at the two of them I feel jealous. Since he came back I've been getting closer and closer to Naruto, and I was sometimes starting to think he wasn't anywhere near as bad as I remember. Granted, sometimes I thought he was much worse, but considering what I've heard about Jiraiya-sama I figured it's amazing he isn't ridiculously worse. He even started to look cute to me sometimes. Well, when he wasn't annoying me anyway. What about Sasuke? Oh. The young woman blushed. I don't know anymore. 3 years ago I would have done anything for Sasuke. She hesitated. I even asked him to take me with him when he ran off to Orochimaru. I didn't care about anything else, I loved him so much. Tears began to well up in Sakura's eyes. That bad? This one surprised Tsunade. When we caught up to him a few months ago and I first saw him, all those feelings came rushing back to me. I felt even more attracted to him than I remembered. I couldn't see anything else but him and I was completely paralyzed for a few seconds. But then I thought he was going to kill Naruto and I got so angry. I was going to stop him if I had to kill him myself. I began to think that even though he was obviously right there in front of me, that the Sasuke I loved died long ago. Naruto has become one of the best friends I've ever had. He's always had a crush on me going all the way back to our academy days, but I always thought of him as annoying, well, annoying at best anyway. But despite the fact that he thought he was madly in love with me, I'm one of the big reasons why he's so desperate to bring Sasuke back. You are? Oh, that's right, he promised you he would, didn't he? Yes, at first I thought it was just Naruto being Naruto, but over the years he was gone I realized that he really loved me. So much so, that he'd give up his own feelings for me just to make me happy, even if that meant I was going to be with someone else. You can't latch on to that type of love in Naruto, at least not now. When it comes to his friends he loves all of them that way. It's not something he's likely to admit to anyone though. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to help you here, Sakura. I know, but I had to talk to someone about all this and I didn't think any of the others would be very understanding. Seriously, can you see me talking to Ino about even the slightest possibility of me liking Naruto more than Sasuke? I think her head would explode. Sometimes I think my head would explode if I really thought about it all. I understand, listening I can do. Besides, who knows, I may even be able to help a little after all. She paused. To be honest, I was rather surprised that Naruto grew so attached to Hinata so quickly. I've been looking into the two of them, and I discovered some interesting things that may help you out. Although knowing some of this may make things worse, and this could be a little painful for you. Sakura's eyes widened a bit at that. Worse? Possibly. When things like this happen, it sometimes makes people face things about themselves that they don't care to see. I suspect that you're actually part of the reason why Naruto has fallen for Hinata so hard and so quickly. From what I've been able to gather, she's liked him for at least as long as he's liked you. I suspect that at least since that promise he made to you, a small part of Naruto stopped thinking about you in a romantic manner, if it hadn't started even sooner. I think it could have started when I first came back to Konoha. When I healed Sasuke from the effects of being attacked by Itachi, Naruto got a front row seat to your extremely emotional response to Sasuke waking up. You probably didn't notice, but he actually backed off and left the room. Of course, he seemed to quickly jump back to his normal self as he then proceeded to bully me into seeing Lee immediately. On most levels he probably still loved you and most of him wanted to be your boyfriend, but deep down a part of him felt that you and Sasuke belonged together. So are you sure you want to know more? I think I'd rather know than not. It may hurt, but I'd rather understand. Tsunade smiled softly at her apprentice. Well, going back over the years, it's pretty obvious that you were especially brutal to Naruto's feelings. Kakashi even mentioned it in his first assessment report on Team 7. I sometimes think that we're all very lucky that he didn't take your treating him as if he was some sort of nasty thing that you didn't want in your life in a different way. Sometimes that kind of treatment can cause one person to start hating the other, but Naruto simply doesn't work that way. You can hurt Naruto all you want, and it simply doesn't bother him. Hurt one of his friends though, and it's a much different story. The fact that he doesn't hate most of the village after years of similar treatment is amazing and is probably one of the reasons why he never hated you, no matter how brutally you turned him down. No matter how many times you rejected him, he just kept on hoping and trying. It's not like I have to say yes every time someone asks me out. Sakura said quietly. No, of course not, but there are better ways to turn someone down than the way you usually treated Naruto, no matter how annoying they may be. Tsunade felt bad at the sight of Sakura slumping down at her words. You're right, Sakura said in a very small voice. Now I had to really look, but it seems that the few times Hinata and Naruto interacted, she was the complete opposite. He quite possibly never realized it, at least not consciously, but as near as I could tell, she pretty much always supported him. I think she was the only girl in your age group to do anything at all along those lines. If she hadn't been so shy, she probably would have caught his attention much sooner. That first Chunin exam you all took years ago was especially interesting. There's some video from the matches that was revealing. You know, he cheered both of you on. In fact, I suspect that it is because of Naruto that both you and Hinata fared as well as you did. But I drew a tie against Ino, and Hinata was totally dominated by Niji. Yes, that's true, and I talked to Kakashi about that. Seems that if it weren't for Naruto you would have lost completely, not tied. It also seems that Naruto is the one who triggered Hinata's fierce determination to even face Niji at all. Also, after Hinata lost, Naruto jumped down to check on her, and it seems that he pretty much vowed to beat Niji because of her. I don't believe you got that much attention from him at the time? Sakura blinked in shock. She had forgotten much. I don't know, another fight was going on when I woke up and Naruto was watching it. I forgot that he leapt down for Hinata. The really funny thing back then though, was that a month later, Naruto actually beat Niji. That was the first time he was able to intentionally draw on the Nine Tails' power in a fight, you know. He freaked out quite a number of the older people here at the village with that one, from what I heard. What's truly amazing though is the effect that had on the Hyuga family. Because of Naruto, Hinata's father Hayashi was reconciled with Niji over the death of Niji's father, who happened to be Hayashi's twin brother. In fact, the Hyuga family has been working on making some rather major internal changes to prevent any further tension between the main and branch families. All because of Naruto. Although I doubt they'd ever admit he was the catalyst for that, and what we saw tonight is a pretty strong indicator that there is plenty of friction over whatever changes are going on. After Naruto's conversation with Hayashi earlier, I'm expecting some more interesting stuff in the future for the Hyuga family. You don't actually expect him to be able to take on any of the Hyuga and win, do you? I mean, sure, he beat Niji years ago, but I don't know if he could do it again. Sakura, you of all people should know better than to ever underestimate Naruto Uzumaki. If he's claiming to have 2 or 3 ways to beat the best Hyuga techniques, it wouldn't surprise me if he really had 6 or 7. Sakura's eyes widened. You believe him? She paused for a moment, and looked down shamefully. You're right though, I should know better. Sakura, just keep in mind that no matter what, these days I would never bet against Naruto. Getting back to our new couple, from what I've been able to gather, Naruto and Hinata had a brief encounter before his match with Niji. Seems that Naruto was actually feeling unsure of himself before the match, and Hinata re-inspired him. All of that really doesn't seem to be enough to explain what's happening now between them, Sakura said quietly. To be brutally honest, it shouldn't be, Tsunade said. Even when you factor in an additional half-dozen missions or so that Naruto and Hinata went on together before he left with Jiraiya, there just doesn't seem to be enough to justify how strongly Naruto feels. The only seemingly solid explanation is that over the years Hinata was the only girl among your peers that showed any sort of positive interest in Naruto. Granted, she was often incoherent in front of him, even fainted because of him a few times, and he was too clueless to know why. Couple that with Naruto's own history of loneliness, and a lot more becomes possible. Well, once she got through his thick skull anyway, Tsunade paused and looked at her depressed pupil. This next part was going to be especially hard on the young woman. Sakura, this is going to be a bit more painful, I'm afraid. That's okay. I want to know. Please don't feel like this is your fault. It's not, but you are a part of it. I understand, please go on. Well, that mission when you saw Naruto change into a four-tailed fox form was especially hard on Naruto. I know from Yamato's report that you tried to shield Naruto from the knowledge that he was the one who hurt you, but Yamato felt that Naruto needed to know that he was the one who was really responsible. Also, during his training with Jiraiya, a similar incident occurred and Naruto almost killed Jiraiya. Having hurt a second person of the people closest to him was severely depressing Naruto. That's on top of the depression he had been feeling about not being able to rescue Sasuke after you guys encountered him and Orochimaru. You'd likely never know it, but he had gotten to the point where he was starting to even lose his appetite. Tsunade paused to let Sakura absorb all of that before continuing. It's my understanding that the subject of his old feelings for you recently came up. I believe that he had been flipping between seeing you as a romantic interest and seeing you as a sister. He apparently decided that you would never love him romantically, even if your feelings for Sasuke changed. He then came to the conclusion that nobody should love him like that because he was afraid of what might happen if the damn Nine Tails took him again. It may very well be the only thing Naruto has ever truly given up on in his entire life. At least I hope it is. Not so much that he gave up on you, but that he gave up on all love in a romantic sense. Between that belief and the seemingly mere act of surrendering to that belief, Naruto was not doing very good. Sakura's eyes grew wide. That's terrible. How can anyone ever think that about themselves? Actually, Sakura, it happens quite often in this world. Granted, I doubt anyone other than Naruto has the pressures he does because of the nine-tailed fox. The way things were going, Gaara would have, but now that he no longer holds Shikaku, that no longer applies. Well, during the recent battle, Naruto not only went into his four-tailed state, but took it a step further and went to five tails. This not only happened in front of Hinata, but because of her Byakugan she was able to face and challenge the fox demon. Somehow she was then able to pull Naruto out of the five-tailed state. Oh my, that's what he meant earlier, Sakura said softly. Also, as of now, Hinata was the only precious person, as the fourth Hokage would say, to Naruto, who has really encountered him in the four-tailed state that wasn't hurt. Yamato is close, but he simply hadn't known Naruto long enough to matter when Yamato witnessed his four-tailed state. Kakashi has only seen a few glimpses of Naruto's Kyuubi state during training and during the mission to rescue Gaara, to my understanding. Add in the fact that she stood up to the demon to pull him away from it, and the desolate loneliness he was feeling romantically, along with what little past they do have, which was unfortunately a lot for him. It was simply a good combination for Naruto to simply dive in without looking back. You know how he gets. Yeah, I know, Sakura said before her voice dropped to barely a whisper. He's never going to let her go, is he? That much I think is safe to say. I pity anyone foolish enough to even attempt to separate those two now. Naruto stood up to Gaara, transformed as Shikaku to protect you, Sasuke, and everyone in the village. This time around he dominated the Kyuubi and took its full power because of Hinata. Hinata now, well, you could probably tell after the earlier meeting, but let's just say that she's had some family issues and in some ways was as desperate as Naruto. After she stood up to the damn fox itself and pulled Naruto away from it, I seriously doubt anyone could possibly intimidate that girl now as far as Naruto is concerned. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but the stutter she always had around him is completely gone now. To have him finally notice her in a way she quite possibly had dreamed of for years is far more than she probably ever hoped for. We have two people who are falling madly in love with each other that have survived challenging an actual demon for each other. I don't think either one of them is ever going to let the other go now. I guess I'm going to have to learn not to be jealous then. That's probably a good idea. One more thing. Tsunade paused, giving Sakura a rather intense stare. Is there anything going on between you and Gaara? What? Me and Gaara? Oh. You mean that hug earlier, don't you? No, there's nothing between us. I guess I was just feeling confused about Naruto and Hinata. Good. Don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think it'd be a good idea for Gaara to develop any romantic ties to any of the women here in Konoha. He's become quite popular among the younger people of Suna, especially the girls apparently. If he were to acquire a girlfriend from another village, it would likely cause riots in Suna. Gaara is probably going to have problems nearly equal to Naruto romantically speaking. I don't think he needs any Leaf Village girls, making that problem even worse. That's not even going into the fact that he's the Kazekage. The Sand Village Council would probably have a collective seizure if Gaara found a girlfriend here. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, Sakura said quietly. That's quite alright. You and I have a very close relationship, and you are close to Gaara too, well, as close as most people have come anyway. You just have to remember that our jobs as village leaders often make relationships of all sorts difficult. Considering the company and location when you hugged Gaara, I wouldn't worry this time, but just remember he's the Kazekage when he's out in public. Also, don't dare do anything like that when you're visiting Suna. The young women there will probably kill you for it. If you're lucky anyway. Yes, Tsunade-sama. Okay, it's late, and we've all had a long day. You should head home and get some sleep. I've got a few things to take care of before I check in on Naruto and Hinata. Tsunade gave Sakura a soft smile. Thank you for all of this. Sakura stood up, smiled herself and left, allowing Tsunade to pour herself one final glass of sake before getting up herself and heading over to the guest facility. Naruto was completely baffled as to how, but somehow he wound up alone with Hinata at one of the guest suites near the Hokage's residence. In many ways it was similar to the suite they had stayed in at Suna. Iruka had escorted them to the suite, but he left pretty much as soon as the door was opened. It had been a long and exhausting day, even if he had been unconscious in a hospital bed until some fuzzy time in the afternoon. He was sitting on the couch with Hinata and they were both semi-dozing as they softly held each other's hand. Hinata? Yes? She looked up and he thought he was going to lose himself in her eyes. He shook off the almost dizzy feeling. This was important. Possibly the most important thing he could say to her at this point in their relationship. Remember before the Chunin exam years ago when we talked before the finals? Of course I do, Naruto. Well, remember that I told you that I act tough all the time because I'm embarrassed about how I screw up all the time? Of course, I told you how it was really inspiring to watch because you make mistakes and have the guts to get back up and try again. I still consider that true strength. Hinata replied as she continued to look into his eyes. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll never be able to finish, Naruto said as he leaned over and with his free hand tousled her hair a bit before he got very quiet and serious. I'm scared, Hinata. He squeezed her hand slightly. I don't want to do anything that will screw this up, let alone screw it up all the time like I screw everything else up. I don't know anything about being a boyfriend or whatever it is I am with you now. I'm so scared that I'm going to mess up and lose you. I've never been so afraid of anything so much before. Even the times during a mission, when I was afraid I was going to die, it was always quick. This fear seems like it's going to last forever. I understand, Naruto. If it helps, you should know that I don't really know what I'm doing either. I never really talked to any of the other girls about stuff like this. They all thought I was strange because I liked you the few times it came up. We will get through this. At the very least we can work together on it, right? Of course, I never want to let you go. Naruto gathered his courage. So does that mean that we are actually boyfriend and girlfriend now? Hinata blushed slightly but smiled. Yes, silly, what else would you call us? All traces of her typical stutter when talking to him had vanished, he noticed. I don't know, I've never had a girlfriend before or anything like that. This feels like it's more than I imagined having a girlfriend would be and nothing like all that stuff Jiraiya writes about all the time. I think you're right, it is more, but we'll use boyfriend and girlfriend for now. Hinata squeezed his hand again. Hinata? Naruto looked at her with fear in his eyes this time. Are we really in love? It's an awfully big word, you know. Hinata paused as she noticed the fear and squeezed his hand again. Naruto, I really don't know either. I think we are. At least we are more so than almost everyone else I know, but it is very soon for us to be using that word, I think. Thank you for understanding. For a second there I was worried that you would think I didn't want to be with you, because I really do, but this is all so new and I don't want to screw things up by saying the wrong things or the right things at the wrong time. You know, you're right, we can work on all of this stuff together, he said as he breathed a sigh of relief. She suddenly started blushing again and softly smiled. There is something though that I want us to do now. Sure, whatever you want. Naruto looked at her blushing face slightly confused. Come here, I think we should be standing. She smiled as she got up, pulled him up with her and looked around as she took off her jacket and tossed it onto one of the arms of the couch. Didn't Tsunade say to keep our clothes on? Naruto asked with a slight tinge of panic in his voice. Jackets don't count, silly. Hinata said as she stared into his eyes. Oh, okay then. Naruto answered as he took off his own and tossed it onto Hinata's. It still made him feel uneasy though. They were in a guest suite for visiting dignitaries and as such it had certain features that weren't present even in a place like her home. Her eyes locked onto a fountain in one corner of the main room. It was near the door and set back in its own alcove. Hinata's smile got slightly larger. That will do quite nicely, she said softly as she led Naruto to stand near the fountain. What will do? Naruto said as he began to get nervous. Something was going on and he felt more clueless than he had ever felt before. Stand right here. Now put your arms around me. She stood in front of him and looked deep into his eyes. She gently reached up to put her arms around his neck. Naruto was feeling strange. Her eyes had become hypnotic, and he almost felt that he was drowning in them. Hinata smiled at the slightly dazed expression on his face as she spoke ever so softly, just above a whisper. Close your eyes and kiss me, Naruto. Naruto somehow knew that he shouldn't say anything now. He closed his eyes, tilted his head to the side and down as Hinata lifted hers up slightly. Although it was a bit clumsy, their lips met, and they softly pressed them together. Hinata moved her hands to the back of his head and ran her fingers through his hair, sending chills down his back. Naruto slowly began to caress the small of her back with his left hand to send a slight tingle up her spine. Hinata shifted slightly and grabbed the back of his head and forcefully pressed her lips firmly into his. She ran her tongue between his lips, slowly forcing them to open slightly. Her tongue pressed in and she ran it over the edges of his teeth for a brief moment before going deeper to softly touch his tongue with hers. Naruto's eyes popped open in surprise and he watched as Hinata slowly opened her own. She pulled her tongue back to her own mouth and pulled slightly away to end their first kiss. Naruto was completely stunned. He couldn't think anymore, he just simply seemed to be falling forever into her endless eyes. He swayed slightly and suddenly lost his balance, falling onto his rear end right in front of her. This got a giggle out of Hinata. "Well, I think we didn't screw that up," she said as she continued to giggle. Naruto slowly became aware of his surroundings and realized he was on the floor. He looked up at Hinata, who was still standing over him. He couldn't help but notice that her shirt was short and therefore open at the bottom, and he could see most of her stomach and the edge of her lower ribs. Hinata. Could I?" He blushed furiously. Hinata looked down at her boyfriend and saw the intense blush. She suddenly realized that he must be able to see at least part way up her shirt. Although she blushed furiously herself, she was surprised that not only did that not bother her, she actually enjoyed the idea of Naruto looking at her like that. So although she put her hand over the edge of her shirt, it wasn't done as fast as it might have been otherwise. "What was that, Naruto?" she asked. "Well, could I see the scar?" he asked in a final rapid burst of words. "Oh. Of course, Naruto." Part of her was disappointed that he didn't ask to see more, but she knew there would be plenty of time for that kind of stuff later. She slowly lowered herself, bending her knees slightly, and lifted her shirt slightly to expose her lower rib cage. She did keep her shirt tightly against her body though. She figured she had a whole inch of a safety margin before this would cross the line sexually. Well, maybe a half inch. She smiled softly. It was nice to think of without worrying. After all, in every way that she thought really mattered, he belonged to her now, as she belonged to him. Naruto cautiously reached up and touched a small spot that had a few flecks of scar tissue. "Is this it?" "Yes, careful though, that tickles a bit." "It doesn't look like much of a scar though." Tsunade said it had healed extremely well. "What about your back? Supposedly there's even less scar tissue back there. Can I see that too?" "Yes, silly." She giggled again as she turned around and lifted the back of her shirt for him. Naruto blushed furiously and thought he was going to fade out again as he spotted the lower edge of the back of her brow. It was a soft lilac or lavender lace that perfectly matched her eyes when they weren't the complete white like the times she was using her Byakugan. Burying those thoughts before they could really start, he reached out again and softly circled a small spot on her back with his index finger that he thought had a fleck of scar tissue. "Is this it?" he asked. Hinata giggled a little more. "Yes, and stop that, it tickles." Naruto was seized by a sudden impulse. He put his hands on her hips, and while pulling her back slightly he craned his neck a bit, and reached out with his lips to softly kiss the single speck of scar tissue. Hinata squealed and jumped up out of his grasp, spinning around to face him. Her cheeks flashed crimson. "Hey! That really tickled," she said, but with a large soft smile as the color of her blush faded to a soft red. "Well, I figured it's a boo-boo that I could kiss and make it all better." He grinned wildly as their eyes locked. "If you want, I could stop kissing you." "Don't you dare even think that, Naruto-chan." She smiled, knowing he was simply teasing her, and she could tease him back. "Naruto-chan? Aren't I a little old for that?" Naruto was somewhat stunned. "Well, I guess so." Hinata smiled with a slightly evil look. "Maybe you should just think of yourself as my little Naruto-chan." "Hinata-chan, see, it's okay for you to use it. But you're a girl, so you finally noticed after all these years. Well, I guess I really am a little on the dense side," he muttered while his cheeks colored slightly. "How about I just call you Na-chan? Maybe Naru-chan?" Hinata's grin grew into a full smile. "Well, that's certainly a bit better, but isn't it a little intimate?" Naruto began to blush brighter. "Do you see anyone else here?" Hinata's own smile grew as her voice took on a husky, sultry edge that he had never imagined could come from shy little Hinata, but that didn't stop it from sending chills throughout his body. "You know, I vaguely remember that you were a shy girl who had a lot of trouble talking," he finally said after staring at her for what seemed to be hours. "Naruto." Hinata suddenly became serious as she reached down and took Naruto's hand in her own. "I think that was only because I was afraid that if I said something wrong you wouldn't like me. Now that I know that's nothing to worry about, I'm not afraid of that anymore. Even my stutter is gone. You know, I think it'd be a good idea for you to get up off the floor." "I don't know about that. I'm not sure if my legs work yet. Maybe you should come down here." He tugged slightly on her hand, but she resisted. "I don't think so. I'm sure you can stand. I bet I could make it worth your while." She softened her smile and stared intently yet somehow softly into his eyes. Naruto scrambled up. "Hey, look at that, you were right. Of course I was silly. Hey! Wait a second. How did you get to be the one in control here?" Hinata smiled slyly and pulled him into a fierce hug. She wasn't sure if she should continue teasing him or kiss him again. Before she could decide, his stomach growled rather noisily. "Looks like I'm not in complete control after all." She laughed. "I guess we should check the kitchen," he said. A short walk later found them in the small kitchen. Naruto thought it was huge while Hinata thought it was cute. Separating to rifle through the cabinets, Naruto quickly found a nice stockpile of instant ramen. "Hey, it looks like someone knew we were going to be staying here," he said with one of his big smiles. "Tsunade-sama is very good." Hinata looked over her shoulder and rolled her eyes at the stockpile of ramen. Don't even think that you're only eating ramen. Naruto's eyes grew wide in shock for a brief moment until he remembered that Hinata was a very good cook. Well, as long as you're doing the cooking. Hinata grabbed a small pot, filled it with water and set it up on the stove to quickly boil. I don't think having a cup will hurt your appetite, and it will tide you over until I whip up a quick meal, she said with a smile. A half hour later they were back on the couch. Naruto had finished both his single cup of ramen along with a rather large amount of food that Hinata managed to cook up, surprisingly quickly. It had all been simple fare, mostly rice and some noodles along with a bit of chicken. She knew in this case volume was probably the most important factor. If he was starving after 8 bowls of ramen a mere 4 hours or so earlier, she figured it didn't really matter what she cooked as long as it was hot and plentiful. Sitting on the couch together in a slight daze proved that she had been right. A wave of exhaustion passed over both of them, and before either one of them realized what had happened they were both lying on the couch together fast asleep. Naruto was up against the back of the couch with one arm under his head and the other wrapped around Hinata holding her hand. About 5 minutes later the door opened to reveal Tsunade, Kurenai and Shikamaru, who was carrying a suitcase. Isn't that cute? Tsunade said softly as she spotted Naruto and Hinata fast asleep cuddled up on the couch. Should we wake them up? Kurenai asked, also in a quiet voice. I think we can leave them like that. Shikamaru, get a blanket and pillow from one of the rooms please, Tsunade said as she walked over to the couch. They didn't even take off their shoes. Tsunade rolled her eyes as she gently took off first Hinata's and then Naruto's shoes. Either of them so much as stirred at this. Tsunade, seeing Shikamaru return, took the pillow and stuffed it under Naruto's head. He mumbled something incomprehensible as he shifted slightly and pulled the pillow further under his head without waking up. His slight shifting though caused Hinata to slowly open her eyes. She looked around a bit and almost closed them before she realized who was standing in front of her. Her eyes snapped open so widely that Tsunade worried they might actually fall out of the poor girl's head. Hinata inhaled a sharp gasp of air, and her whole face burned with a nearly glow in the dark crimson. Before the young girl could jump up though, Tsunade firmly grasped her shoulder. Sure, you'll wake up Naruto, just relax, everything is fine. Remember, Kurenai-sensei will be in the next room, Tsunade said very softly. Hinata's eyes darted from Tsunade to Kurenai to Shikamaru before she tightly closed them and slowly reopened one of them. Seeing that the three were still there, she sighed and opened her other eye. Tsunade took the blanket from the grinning Shikamaru and draped it over the two of them. Without another word, Tsunade and Shikamaru left, and then Kurenai went off into one of the bedrooms after a smile and a wave. Hinata lay there for several minutes, still unsure whether or not she had imagined the whole thing. She smiled as she shifted slightly, pulling one of her arms out from under Naruto's and laying it back down on top of his arm. Reaching over with that hand, she completely enclosed his hand that she had been holding with her other hand with both of her hands. With a soft sigh, her smile deepened, and a few minutes later she was fast asleep. Naruto woke up a few hours later to a pins and needles sensation in his left arm. He was pretty groggy and forgot where he was for a moment. As he opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was a mass of black hair that had a bluish sheen to it that really stood out in the dim light. His heart skipped a beat as he realized he had been sleeping with Hinata on the couch. The nervousness didn't last long as the smell of her mixed with her lilac perfume invaded his consciousness and immediately calmed him. Still, he couldn't stay like this. With the utmost care, he slowly extracted his hand from both of hers. He then carefully lifted his arm that she was using as pillow and pushed the pillow he had been using into the space his arm. He then slowly pulled his arm out, leaving her resting on the pillow. Using the skills he acquired climbing trees and walking on water, he stood on the arm of the couch, shuffling around their jackets, and slowly walked around the arm until he was able to step onto the floor and walk normally. He glanced at Hinata, who seemed a bit agitated but was still asleep. He started shaking his arm and running it through a few stretching routines. Looking back across the common area, there were actually 2 couches and 4 chairs in the center of the common area with a decent-sized coffee table in the middle. Looking around some more, and he noticed there were several doors off of the common area. 2 near the front door were across from the fountain. That was something he would remember to the end of his days, he knew as he smiled. He slowly and quietly walked over and opened the first door and found a decent-sized closet. Something seemed odd, and he had felt uneasy as he walked towards that first door, but it faded slightly as he took a step closer to Hinata. The link. He had almost forgotten about it. He walked back to the couch, gathered up the 2 jackets, and hung them properly in the closet. Rubbing his eyes, he checked the next door, and was stunned to see a nice-sized hot tub. He was no longer absolutely sure of Tsunade's motives, but he certainly wasn't going to complain. Looking back over the major part of the common area, he counted 4 more doors, 2 on each side, and then noticed a 5th across from the kitchen area next to the eating area. He hadn't noticed earlier, but the table was pretty big and had 8 chairs. That area was really just an extension of the common area. The door closest to the fountain was open, so he decided to check that first. As he quietly peeked in, he was surprised to see Kurenai-sensei fast asleep in the first of 2 large beds. Carefully he backed out, afraid that he would wake her up. He should have known better. Even though he didn't see them due to a simple genjutsu Kurenai had invoked, her eyes were open and she was watching him intently. He checked the room next to Kurenai's and found another bedroom with 2 large beds and its own set of doors. Checking those 2 doors, despite the growing feeling of unease, he discovered a bathroom and a closet. Walking across, he checked the other 2 and they were basically the same. The only difference he could see was that the rooms on Kurenai's side of the suite had the bathrooms and closets further away from each other. Kurenai's bathroom and closet were actually up against the fountain, and the other room on that side, the bathroom and closet, were up against the kitchen. The rooms on the other side though had what had to be the bathrooms and closets between the 2 rooms. Naruto wasn't about to go and check just to be sure, since he worried that the uneasiness he felt would also be felt by Hinata and he didn't want to wake her. Looking through the last door, which was luckily open, from the coffee table area he saw what looked like a meeting room with the edge of what looked like a large table, and he spotted some chairs. He went back to the room between Kurenai's and the kitchen. Going up to the first bed, he pulled back the covers. He then headed back to Hinata and very carefully hooked one arm under her knees and the other behind her neck across her shoulders and slowly picked her up. Hinata's free arm dangled for a moment before she murmured something he didn't understand, and she actually reached up to grab his shoulder without waking up. Naruto carefully walked her to the bedroom where he had pulled the covers back and carefully put her down on the bed, and slowly pulled the covers back over her. He quietly left the room and headed to one of the empty ones on the other side of the common area. Every step he took away from her made him more and more apprehensive. As he opened the door on the other side of the common area, he actually felt an odd sort of tug back to Hinata. He suddenly froze as he heard her shuffling around, and he realized she must be feeling this tugging as well. Damn! He cursed quietly but still intently. He gauged the distance of all the beds in relation to each other in all the rooms. Cursing under his breath again, he realized there was only one solution to his problem if he was going to get any decent sleep in a bed instead of staying on the couch. With a nervous gulp, he headed back into Kurenai's room using every bit of stealth at his command. Sneaking past the apparently sleeping Kurenai, he pulled the covers back on the second bed next to the one he thought Hinata-sensei was sleeping in. Again drawing on every ounce of stealth in his being, he snuck back out and headed back to the room where he left Hinata. Carefully pulling back the covers again, he picked her up again and softly brought her into the room with Kurenai and carefully put her in the second bed and pulled the covers over her again. He looked down at his girlfriend sleeping and tenderly brushed her hair away from her eyes. This time he leaned over and softly kissed her on her forehead before he turned and snuck back out to the common area. Breathing a great but soft sigh of relief, he finally relaxed slightly, until his stomach growled softly. He eyed the kitchen and figured that even though he was sure he'd seen a few boxes of trail mix bars in one cabinet, there was no way his link with Hinata would allow him to get them without disturbing her. Looking around, he noticed their holsters and belt kits on the coffee table. He had absolutely no memory of either of them taking their gear off, but he was happy to see them. He knew he didn't carry anything in his that would solve his current problem, so he checked Hinata's and smiled when he saw a few more ration bars in her kit. He had always kept extra kunai in his kit, but after this evening he was going to reconsider that. He quickly wolfed down 2 of the ration bars, leaving 1 in her kit. He suddenly yawned and realized that he was still really beat, and it had to be something like 3 or 4 in the morning. Quietly he entered the bedroom closer to the kitchen and crawled into the bed he had tried to leave Hinata in earlier. He smiled as his head hit the pillow because there was the faintest scent of lilacs on the pillow. Before he knew it, he was fast asleep. Kurenai silently got up and looked in on Naruto with a smile on her face. "Good boy, Naruto," she softly whispered. Although boy doesn't really apply to him anymore, she thought. She heard a soft rustling from her room and quickly cast another genjutsu, so she seemingly melted into the wall. Hinata stumbled in, looking distraught, and with her eyes only half open. "Naruto-kun?" the young woman whispered as she walked up to the sleeping blonde ninja. He didn't visibly really react, it seemed, but if she had been more awake she would have noticed that he smiled a little more from the sound of her voice. She leaned down and softly touched his shoulder. "And Naruto?" Her quiet voice had a slight quiver to it. That slight waver in her voice shocked him awake. "Hinata, why did you leave me alone?" Hinata asked as a small tear welled up in her eye. Naruto bolted upright, his eyes wide in panic at the sight of the half-tear. "I'm sorry," he whispered intently as he reached out and took her hand. "I thought it was the right thing to do, you know. I didn't mean or want to leave you alone. Besides, Kurenai-sensei was asleep in the other bed, so you weren't really alone." "She was? I didn't notice. I only knew you were gone." Hinata hesitated for a moment before asking. "Can I stay with you, please?" "Oh." Naruto's eyes grew wide in shock and a small bit of fear. As he looked at her standing there in the semi-darkness on the verge of tears, his heart melted, and he gave her the only answer he could. "Of course you can. You can do whatever you want. Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said as she climbed into the bed with him. "Besides, I thought we already established that you're the one in control here." "Of course, silly." She gave him a quick little kiss that barely brushed his lips before rolling over and putting her back against his chest. "Well, as long as we keep our clothes on, we'll be fine, right? I wouldn't want Tsunade-sama to end our relationship by killing me," Naruto said just before he was overcome by a yawn as he wrapped his arm around her. "I don't think you have anything to worry about." Hinata finished as she almost instantly fell back into a deep sleep with a soft smile, and one final word silently going through her head yet. Naruto smiled as he lifted his arm to pull the covers over the 2 of them, and put his arm back over her to take her hand. This time having a bit more space and each having their own pillow, he knew he didn't have to worry about his arm falling asleep again. For a few moments though he lay there wide-eyed in shock as the realization settled in that he was in bed with Hinata. It didn't take long though before the faint smell of her body mixed with her lilac perfume completely relaxed him, and he was also fast asleep. Kurenai dropped her genjutsu, shook her head with a smile and silently left the room. She knew Hinata's father would be extremely upset over this, but she also knew there was nothing to worry about. Although the thought of telling him herself crossed her mind, she decided she couldn't do that to Hinata. It certainly would have been entertaining though. Several hours later Kurenai walked in to wake them both up. She chuckled at the bright red faces of the two teenagers and simply told them to join her out in the kitchen for breakfast as she walked out of the room. Naruto and Hinata sat there stunned for a few moments before getting out of bed, sneaking a quick kiss and heading out to the common area. While Hinata and Kurenai went about making a decent breakfast, Naruto polished off an entire box of trail mix bars. They weren't as complete as the ration bars he had earlier, but they were a damn sight tastier. Naruto was intrigued by the two women cooking. He was what he considered a survival cook. Basically, he could boil water. That usually meant instant ramen in a cup, but he would occasionally cook up a batch of rice for himself as well. On extremely rare occasions he would go as far to attempt a nori-wrapped rice ball, but that always turned into a pile of rice on top of a mangled sheet of nori. Breakfast was looking to be quite filling, possibly even for the ravenous blonde ninja. He was actually slowing down his voracious guzzling of food during his third set of helpings, not counting the trail mix bars of course. After seeing how he had been eating since leaving the hospital, Hinata had prepared enough food for Naruto alone that would have satisfied at least a half-dozen people. Kurenai originally started to protest, but Hinata told her to simply trust her. A short time later, as Naruto began work on his fourth complete meal, Kurenai silently admitted to herself that Hinata had been right. There was a short knock on the door. Hinata and Naruto both got up to go together, but Kurenai stopped them and said, "Naruto, I'd like you to try answer the door yourself. I'd like to see the two of you start stretching the limit of this link." "Okay," Naruto mumbled as Hinata simply nodded. He got about halfway to the door when he felt the tugging back towards Hinata. Stopping for a moment to look back, he could see that Hinata was visibly uncomfortable, but otherwise okay. "Go ahead, Naruto. It's like stretching, I would imagine. Just keep pushing and let's see how far you can get." Much to his surprise, he actually made it to the door. Opening it, he was surprised to see both Hanabi and Niji, each holding 2 travel bags. "I think you guys may have overdone things a bit. She's not moving in permanently, you know," Kurenai said as the two entered. "Father figured it was best to send too much than to send too little," Hanabi answered. "Fine, then just put everything in the first room on the right there. Please excuse the mess, we haven't had a chance to clean up yet." Naruto closed the door and was about to head back to the table when the door knocked again. He was still feeling ridiculously uneasy, but he turned and answered the door anyway to find Kakashi-sensei and Shikamaru standing there with 2 of Naruto's travel bags. "Kakashi-sensei? Shikamaru? I can't believe both of you are up this early." "Well, if you weren't such a headache I wouldn't be," grumbled Shikamaru. "I'm always up earlier than this, Naruto. I just changed my plans a little for you," Kakashi said, obviously grinning behind his mask. As Naruto took the 2 bags from his teacher and friend Hanabi, and Niji came out of the bedroom Kurenai was using. "If any of you haven't had breakfast yet, we still have plenty left, and can easily make more," Kurenai said to the crowd. Kakashi and Shikamaru elected to stay while the Hyugas decided to leave. Although Naruto was completely oblivious to it, Kurenai smiled to herself as she watched Niji closely watching Naruto as he deposited his own stuff in the second room. Kurenai was certain that word would get back to Hayashi that Hinata was sharing a room with her sensei while Naruto was in the next room over. As much as she would have enjoyed tormenting Hayashi, she cared too much for Hinata to let anyone know about the real sleeping arrangements, other than Tsunade anyway. Naruto finished off his 5th helping, although it was more of a half helping as the additionally food was split between Kakashi and Shikamaru. Hinata and Kurenai each ate a small amount themselves. Kakashi and Shikamaru each said thank you to the ladies and left. Kurenai told Naruto to clean up the breakfast dishes and the ones left from last night. He was about to summon up a few clones to help him out when Kurenai stopped him. "Tsunade doesn't want you to be doing anything that uses chakra until she has had a chance to look you over," she told him to his dismay before she looked to Hinata. "I'm going to take a shower and I don't want you helping him either." "Yes, Kurenai-sensei." Hinata looked down, actually saddened by Kurenai's command. "Don't worry about it, Hinata. If this is all I've got to do to get a good meal, I definitely have got the better end of the bargain. You're a really good cook." He smiled greatly as he started gathering the dishes into the sink. "Kurenai-sensei, is there going to be a problem with Naruto doing the dishes while you are in the shower?" "Not with these sweets, Hinata. We could run all 4 showers, the sink and fill the hot tub and not have a problem." "Hot tub?" Hinata squeaked out as Kurenai disappeared. Much to her dismay though, Naruto heard her. "It's near the front door, Hinata-chan, second door across from the fountain. You should check it out, it's huge," Naruto called out over his shoulder as he ran a large amount of soap and water into the sink, creating a huge pile of bubbles. Keeping her back to him to hide her red face, Hinata slowly walked to the hot tub door. Each step she took made her feel more and more uneasy, but it also seemed to be easier to tolerate. She was surprised, as Naruto said it was huge. She figured it could easily hold 8 if not a dozen people. She wasn't sure if she was ready to deal with something like this in any way involving Naruto just yet though. With a great sigh she left the hot tub room and forcibly calmed herself as she headed back to the kitchen. Getting closer to Naruto through their links certainly helped. Naruto seemed to be more intent on making more and more bubbles than actually cleaning anything, it almost seemed. He was certainly scrubbing furiously at the pots and pans, and while the dishes were certainly getting cleaned, Hinata didn't think she'd ever seen so many bubbles before. She smiled impishly as she jumped up to sit on the counter across from the sink. "Do you think you have enough bubbles there, Naruto-chan?" Naruto froze for a second before slowly turning around with a large-eyed, hurt puppy dog expression. Sticking his lower lip out as he tilted his head down so he seemed to be looking up at her, he said, "I thought you weren't going to use that anymore, Hinata-chan." Trying desperately hard not to smile, he made his eyebrows quiver just a bit. Hinata felt as though her heart was melting at the sight of Naruto pouting. Jumping off the counter, she nearly flew the 3 feet to him to grab him into a great hug. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I think I'm going to need a kiss for that one." Naruto smiled. Hinata didn't notice there was the slightest touch of mischief to his grin. As she pulled him down to her lips and began to seriously kiss him, he almost completely forgot what he intended to do, but his inner prankster wouldn't let go. As he brought his arms from behind his back, Hinata never saw that both of his hands were full of soap bubbles. He softly deposited them on top of her head and proceeded to lower his arms to encircle her into a hug of his own. For a moment he completely forgot about the bubbles and lost himself in her kiss. Unfortunately, it didn't last long before a small stream of bubbles slowly flowed down her hair and slid over to her cheek. Hinata's eyes sprung open as she felt the warm water and soap. She struggled a bit since Naruto had pinned her arms within his own, but he was too distracted to remember he was supposed to keep her arms trapped. Reaching up, she felt the large amount of bubbles on her head, and she pulled back, ending their kiss. "Why you?" she said ominously. She suddenly pushed him away so he was back up against the sink. Backing up herself a bit, she suddenly jumped forward and actually jumped on top of him, grabbing his hips with her knees and wrapping her arms around his neck. Naruto was stunned into complete passiveness as once again she locked her lips onto his, and this time she drove his lips apart forcefully with her tongue before she suddenly switched to softly running her tongue along his. She grabbed the edge of the sink and pulled while pressing him down with her kiss. Letting go with one hand, she quietly began to pile more and more of the suds onto his head. His blonde hair was completely covered and suds were beginning to run down his back before he began to realize what was happening. As his eyes popped open, she took a final handful and deposited it on his chin, running her suds-filled hand down his throat and to his chest before she jumped down and started laughing loudly. "I can't believe that you're as bad as I am." Naruto realized that he must have much more bubbles than Hinata. "Forget that, I think you're worse than I am. I think you're going to get a lot more bubbles now." Naruto grabbed her waist and picked her up and started to turn, fully intending to deposit her completely into the sink. Hinata actually squealed and started giggling because at that very moment, as she went to grab him, she discovered that in some spots Naruto was extremely ticklish. Naruto had to let go with one of his hands in an attempt to grab the edge of the sink so he wouldn't fall down, as Hinata's tickling drove him to laugh hysterically. Unfortunately, he grabbed a pot that he had already cleaned but hadn't finished rinsing the soapy water out of. With a sudden crash, he lost his footing, falling to the floor while pulling the half-full pot of warm soapy water on top of them both. Naruto wound up flat on his back with Hinata sitting on his stomach while one of her hands was on his chest. Both of them were completely soaked and bubbles were spreading out across the floor. "Hinata! When I told you not to help him, I didn't mean you should get creative about it and start washing him instead of the dishes," Kurenai said rather loudly as she was suddenly standing over them with her hair in a towel. The two teenagers began to blush as they realized just how bad their situation must have looked. "Hinata! You're wearing a white shirt. Get off of him and go get cleaned up, now." Kurenai didn't quite yell, except for that last word, at the young woman, but it was close. Naruto hadn't noticed before, but once Kurenai mentioned the white shirt he couldn't help but to look down from Hinata's eyes. Not only was Hinata's shirt completely translucent, but the lavender lace of her bra that he had caught a glimpse of the night before was only used for the back support, and straps. The cup material itself was extremely sheer. Although the water had turned the material of her bra to a somewhat darker, almost blue color, the sheer material was also very translucent. Naruto could easily see that Hinata's were very erect and the darker flesh around them was impossible to miss. They both felt their faces burn with embarrassment. Hinata gave a high-pitched squeak, leaped off of Naruto and vanished into Kurenai's room, slamming the doors shut as she flew past it. Naruto was so completely stunned that his brain had basically shut off and he just lay on the floor blinking with his mouth slightly open. "Naruto, get up," Kurenai said as he lay there. When he didn't move, she continued. "Great, just great." Kurenai picked up the pot and stepped over Naruto, quickly rinsed the soapy water out of it and filled it with cold water. She decided to give him one more chance. "Naruto, come on, get up now or you're going to regret it." Naruto was still in shock and simply continued to blink. Kurenai shrugged and dumped the pot of cold water on top of him. Naruto started sputtering as he sat up, still blinking though. "Go on." Naruto get showered and changed. "We've got to see Tsunade." About 20 minutes later the three of them left the guest facility and headed off to the Hokage Tower. Kurenai quietly smiled as they left and walked to the Hokage's office. Naruto and Hinata were also very quiet as they stole small smiles from each other as they walked the streets hand in hand. Naruto, Hinata and Kurenai arrived at the Hokage's office in short order. Kurenai had Naruto and Hinata wait outside while she went in to talk to Tsunade. Great, just great. Naruto muttered. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. I bet Kurenai-sensei is giving Granny Tsunade a full report about us. Well, Tsunade-sama already knew that we fell asleep together on the couch. What? Naruto's eyes grew wide as his mouth fell open. She was with Kurenai-sensei when she arrived last night. Oh, and Shikamaru was there as well. Shikamaru too. Great, as if it wasn't bad before. Now it's just a matter of time before everyone knows. Would that really be a bad thing? Hinata said as she looked down sadly. Sensing something was wrong, he looked over to see the sadness in her face. Hinata, I would like nothing better than to let everyone know that we are a couple now. It's just that if word starts spreading around that we're sleeping together in any way, it's only a matter of time before your father kills me, Naruto said as he tightened his grip on her hand. Naruto! Hinata, get in here! Naruto winced as the booming voice of Tsunade reverberated through the closed door. It was quite obvious she had stressed his name a lot more than Hinata's with her yelling. Well, it looks like I'm not going to have to worry about your father now. Naruto stood up, followed by Hinata, who he took in a big hug, gave her a soft kiss on her lips before continuing. I really do love you, Hinata. This time it was Hinata who was stunned into speechlessness. She stood there blinking, not reacting as Naruto pulled her into the Hokage's office. So just what do you have to say for yourself, Naruto? Tsunade immediately demanded. What do you mean? Naruto asked using every last bit of apparent innocence he could muster. Tsunade paused as she studied the still blinking Hinata. Damn it, Naruto, what have you done to this poor girl now? I didn't do anything, Naruto claimed forcefully before he looked over at his girlfriend. Hinata? Hinata, are you okay? Hinata? Tsunade got up from her desk and walked around to Hinata. Leaning over to stare into the young woman's eyes, she rolled her own eyes before straightening up. She waved her hand in front of Hinata's face and snapped her fingers just in front of her nose. Okay, Naruto, seriously, what did you do? The Hokage asked with a sigh. Naruto looked down sheepishly. I just hugged her, gave her a small kiss, and told her that I really loved her. Why in the world did you have to do that now? Well, with the way you were yelling, I thought it might be the last time I would ever be able to say that to her. Tsunade's shoulders dropped and her irritation vanished. Again she rolled her eyes before turning her attention back to Hinata. Tsunade smirked as she reached past Hinata's cheek and under her hair to pinch the bottom of the girl's earlobe. Ouch! Hinata squeaked out as her eyes grew suddenly wide. Welcome back, dear, Tsunade said before turning and heading back to her seat. Tsunade-sama? Hinata asked. Stay with us now, Hinata. Tsunade nodded to Kurenai. I've been informed of everything that went on after I left last night. I can't say I'm overly pleased with the final sleeping arrangements the two of you came up with, but all things considered it could have been worse. I can't even be really upset with whatever it was that the two of you were doing with the bubbles. Tsunade paused for a moment as the two young ninja were furiously blushing. The two of you are something of a problem. Normally I'd simply give the two of you a few simple guidelines and let things fall where they may. With Hinata being the heir to one of Konoha's most prestigious clans and Naruto being Naruto, things are a bit more complicated. Additionally, the two of you have got the most sickeningly sweet innocence between the two of you. It's actually somewhat hilarious. How Naruto managed to pull that off between his own perverted jutsus and being with Jiraiya for the past few years is a mystery that is far beyond my ability to comprehend. I take it that it is safe to assume that this is the first romantic relationship either of you have really been in, isn't it? Yes. Both said softly together. Great. Tsunade sighed. To be honest, the two of you are in for some difficult challenges ahead of you with this. Let's just say that certain aspects of your relationship are far more advanced than they should be, while other aspects of you both are actually somewhat stunted in their growth, romantically speaking anyway. Normally people your age should have been in at least one if not two relationships by now. Basically, you both have a lot to learn about dealing with someone else like this. You're both a bit over your heads in how much you care for the other, so I'm telling you both to take it easy and be careful. I'm sure that you'll figure it all out somehow, so I'll just leave it with this. I don't care if the two of you are sleeping together. As long as that's all that you are doing. Remember that as long as you are my guests at the suite. Tsunade smiled again as the two of them planted their eyes firmly on the floor and blushed furiously. Now Kurenai-sensei has told me that she's already started having the two of you attempt to stretch the link between you both. I think it's safe to give it a more through looking at. Tsunade suddenly called out. Sakura. Naruto became a bit agitated when he spotted the odd assortment of medical equipment, including a tray full of all sorts of surgical tools on the cart that Sakura wheeled in as she entered Tsunade's office. First, let's look at that arm of yours, Naruto. I've been putting a new bandage on every day after I shower. Still doesn't hurt for me to look it over. I've been a little concerned that your adventure over in Wind Country may have affected this as well. I only gave it a cursory glance while you were in the hospital. Tsunade unwrapped the lengthy bandage covering almost all of Naruto's right arm. He had been wearing one every day, and since the itching had subsided he could almost forget it was there at times. Tsunade hummed slightly as she took his arm in her hands and looked over the reddened skin. The numerous cuts were still healing too slowly for her tastes, but at least the recent battle and his latest stay at the hospital hadn't made anything worse. It didn't take long for her to be satisfied and wrap up his arm herself. Well, it could be better, but at least it doesn't seem to be any worse. Tsunade looked around and sighted her young apprentice. Suddenly she remembered her conversation with Sakura. Sakura, you can head back to the hospital now. I don't think you'll be needed for the rest of this. Of course, Tsunade-sama. The pink-haired Kunoichi said quietly before leaving. Let's see about this link. Hinata, I'd like you to keep watch on it with your Byakugan. Of course, Tsunade-sama. Hinata said before calling out Byakugan. Generally most links similar to this can be severed with a bit of chakra from a medical specialist. After going over the scrolls Naruto commandeered, I've got a feeling that this one isn't going to be a typical chakra link. Tsunade gathered up her own chakra and felt for the thread. Sensing it after a brief search, she concentrated a burst of chakra from her hand that should have been enough to disrupt and cut the thread. She felt a flare of energy, and pulled back her hand with a small yelp as her fingers began to tingle. Swanda-sama. Are you okay? Hinata asked. I saw the link flare. I'm fine, my hand is a little numb but I'm fine. Tsunade answered. Tsunade became somewhat suspicious of this odd link. It shouldn't have flared like that. She pulled a chakra-enhanced scalpel from the tray, focused her own chakra into the blade and probed the area with her medical jutsu until she found the chakra thread, connecting Naruto and Hinata. Using her own chakra, she grabbed hold of the thread. Brace yourselves, you two. This may be a bit, well, I don't actually know what's going to happen, so just brace yourselves. She brought the scalpel to bear on the thread, fully intending to sever the link between the two young ninja with the brute force method. As soon as the chakra-powered blade came into contact with the invisible thread, there was a flash of bluish light that had the slightest tinge of red in it. Everyone gasped since the flash was visible to everyone in the room. They all heard a metallic tink as the light quickly faded. Tsunade brought the scalpel up to her eyes to examine it, and sighed in frustration.